Asbury United Methodist Church. She will lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilwoman Meg Salyer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Holy Lord, you have given each and every one of us specific skills and gifts and a call to service in our lives. There are those today who are being sworn in and those who are conducting the business for this city whose task is to be able to be wise and to give guidance to the matters of our city. Lord, we just ask for your wisdom, your direction, your clarity to be poured into them. And so as they make these decisions, Lord, they're making them all for the best interest of all the people of the state of Oklahoma and of Oklahoma City. We pray this in your most holy name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank you all for coming. We don't always get a full house, and when we do, it's not always a good thing. But today it is. Councilman White has called in and said he's in a traffic jam, which would be Ward 4's first ever traffic jam. So we'll find out where he really was when he gets here and pin him down. We enjoy a wonderful relationship with Oklahoma City University, and as you know, their fine arts program is amongst the best in the world. And whenever they have a new performance, we ask any of their performers if they'll come by and give us a sampling of what people can enjoy on the campus. And today is one of those days. So we have Anderson Daniel and Janelle Dijon, who is here, and I'm going to hand the microphone over to them. And then after they've performed this performance from The Wedding Singer, the musical, which they're going to be performing in soon, they will tell you how you can appear on campus, buy a ticket, and support the OCU Fine Arts program. I'm going to hand the mic over.
I want to make you smile whenever you're sad. Carry around when your arthritis is bad. All I want to do is grow old with you. I'll get you medicine when your tummy aches. Build you a fire if the furnace breaks. Oh, it would be so nice growing old with you. I'll miss you, kiss you, give you my coat when you are cold, meet you, feed you, and even let you hold the remote control. Let me do the dishes in our kitchen sink. Put you to bed when you've had too much to drink. Oh, I could be the man who grows old with you. I'll miss you, kiss you, take your shoes off and rub your feet. Need you, feed you, and when we play checkers, I'll let you cheat. Let me do the dishes in our kitchen sink. Put you to bed when you've had too much to drink. Oh, I could be the one who grows old with you. I want to grow old with you.
much. I just wanted to give you some brief information on how to buy tickets. It's this weekend, and it's Friday, Saturday at 8 p.m., and Sunday at 3 p.m., and it's called The Wedding Singer, and it's at OCU, Oklahoma City University, and I hope you get to go. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. And Janelle is from Houston. Anderson is from Tahlequah, right? And they represent Oklahoma City University so very well, and they represent Oklahoma City so well. How about one more round of applause? Thank you all very much.
Beck, I was noticing that their new president had the biggest smile on his face while that was going on. So.
You a little bit proud, Mr. President? Just a tad. You have a right to be. Well, the Festival of the Arts will be here in 2 weeks. And this morning we have several people who have been working 52 weeks to get ready for this event. Ray Beachy is here along with Kim Mason, Peter DeLisi, and Emily Grover. I'll ask all four of them to come up. We have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it as we get settled.
Whereas the 45th Annual Festival of the Arts, produced by the Arts Council of Oklahoma City, will officially open on Tuesday, April 26th for 6 days of exciting visual and performing arts activities. Whereas the Festival of the Arts is recognized nationally as one of the most spectacular fine arts festivals in America, featuring more than 170 visual artists, continuous live entertainment on 4 outdoor stages, art activities for all ages, and delicious festival foods. Whereas Kim Mason and Ray Beachy, the 2011 festival co-chairs, lead a team of more than 5,000 volunteers who donate their time, talents, resources, and energies to produce a spectacular celebration of the arts for the city of Oklahoma City. Whereas the Festival of the Arts is an annual springtime event which is free to the public and made possible through the generous support of civic and business leaders and individuals who embrace the arts. Proceeds from the festival allow the Arts Council of Oklahoma City to continue to expand its events, arts programming, arts education programs, and cultural arts facilities for the citizens of Oklahoma City. Now, therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim April 26th through May 1st, 2011 as the 45th Annual Festival of the Arts Week in Oklahoma City, and he asks all citizens to join in honoring the Arts Council of Oklahoma City, the volunteers, and the artists who take part in this event.
And I bet we can get a round of applause for the volunteers that go through all of this. Ray?
Mayor, members of the council, city manager, we are deeply honored and consider it a privilege to be a part of this wonderful festival that, as you've just heard, in its 45th year. We thank all of the volunteers who worked so hard to make it possible. And I think this year, Kim and I wanted to use the festival to celebrate the Renaissance that is very evident here in our city. I know it didn't just start overnight. It's been underway for some time now. I know it will continue to be. But from April 26th through May 1st, people from all walks of life in our community will come together, and it is our hope that they will celebrate everything that is good about this community. We want to invite you to join the Lieutenant Governor for the opening ceremonies, April the 26th, Tuesday, and 11 o'clock, and invite everyone else to do so as well. Thank you.
And the Botanical Gardens will be reopening this year. It's been shut down for a year, and so typically, the appearance at the Arts Festival is discretionary. This year it's mandatory that everyone go and enjoy the return of the Botanical Gardens to our array of downtown green spaces, but especially to welcome in a vast collection of art that comes to us from all across the United States and helps us put together one of the top arts festivals in the country. And if we have weather like today, I got a feeling you all are not going to let me down. Thank you all. Let's show one more round of applause for the people that put on the Arts Festival.
Yeah, Mayor, in light of your mandatory proclamation there, would someone make some comments? There's been some questions out of Ward 3 about parking downtown with all the construction. Would somebody just make an announcement about some of the additional parking that will be down there to facilitate their adhering to your mandatory proclamation?
I could share a couple of comments on that, if that would be appropriate. There's going to be some roads shut down as we do Project 180, and so there are going to be some traffic issues getting in and out of downtown. Parking should not be an issue. We have, I believe, more parking spaces than we've had in the past. South of the Arts Festival on the old Fred Jones properties there are areas which will be available for parking. The Devon Garage obviously has provided additional parking in the downtown area. And so I know it might be a little ominous. You might be a little afraid of going down through that traffic and such. And again, the traffic, there are going to be a couple of roads that are narrowed, and that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for us. However, parking should not be an issue. We should have more than we've actually had in the past. So thank you, Mr. McAfee.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes with our community, it seems like the harder you make it to get someplace, the more determined they are to get there. And perhaps that'll be the case this year with the Arts Festival.
We've done our part.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see how hard we can make it to get downtown. That should be great. 2 weeks from today is when it starts, and that kind of kicks off spring in Oklahoma City, and then we have the Memorial Marathon on May the 1st. So wonderful time to be downtown. If you're following along in your council agendas, we're on item 3A, and I need a motion to receive the official election returns from the election that took place on March 1st and the general election that took place on April 5th.
Move the item.
Second. Any comments or questions from the council? All right, cast your votes. And those election returns are accepted. And now we'll move on to the swearing-ins. And item 3B is the swearing-in ceremony for Ed Shadid, David Greenwell, Meg Salyer, and Patrick Ryan. Okay. Ward 2 will be first, and Councilman-elect Ed Shadid. And Dr. Billy Stout will perform the swearing-in.
Thank you, Your Honor. Raise your right hand. I, Ed Shadid,
I, Ed Shadid,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly,
and I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly,
any money or other valuable thing
any money or other valuable thing
for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office,
for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
I further swear or affirm
I further swear or affirm
that I will faithfully discharge my duties as council member of Ward 2
that I will faithfully discharge my duties as council member of Ward 2
of the City of Oklahoma City
of the City of Oklahoma City
and as trustee of the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority,
and as trustee of the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority,
the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority,
the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority,
and the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust
and the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
And now for the swearing in for Ward 5, David Greenwell will be sworn in by former Councilman Jerry Foshee.
Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, David Greenwell,
I, David Greenwell,
do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend
do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and that I will not knowingly receive directly or indirectly
and that I will not knowingly receive directly or indirectly
any money or other valuable thing
any money or other valuable thing
for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty
in the performance or non-performance of any act or duty
pertaining to my office,
pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
I further swear that I will faithfully discharge my duties
I further swear that I will faithfully discharge my duties
as council member of Ward 5
as council member of Ward 5
and the City of Oklahoma City
in the City of Oklahoma City
and the trustee of the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority
and the trustee of the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority
and the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority
and the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority
and the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust
and the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You bet.
Great to see you. Welcome aboard. And now for the swearing in Ward 6. Meg Salyer will be sworn in by Oklahoma City University President Robert Henry.
Would you repeat that? Raise your hand and repeat the oath after me. I, Margaret S. Salyer,
I, Margaret S. Salyer,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and that I will not knowingly receive,
and that I will not knowingly receive,
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly,
any money or other valuable thing
any money or other valuable thing
for the performance
for the performance
or non-performance of any act
or non-performance of any act
or duty pertaining to my office,
or duty pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
I further swear
I further swear
that I will faithfully discharge my duties as council member
that I will faithfully discharge my duties as council member
of Ward 6
of Ward 6
of the City of Oklahoma City
of the City of Oklahoma City,
and as trustee of the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority,
and as trustee of the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority,
the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority,
the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority,
and the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust
and the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust,
to the best of my
to the
ability.
best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is yours. It's suitable for framing.
Thank you, Doctor.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I, Patrick J. Ryan,
I, Patrick J. Ryan,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma, and that I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly, any money or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office, other than the compensation allowed by law. I further swear that I will faithfully discharge my duties as council member of Ward 8 of the City of Oklahoma City and as trustee of the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust, to the best of my ability. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Be careful. Call me. Call you. Okay.
And Ward 8 Councilman Pat Ryan was sworn in by his wife, Grace. Grace, thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Welcome back. Hey, Scott.
I haven't gotten a desk picture.
Bye, Ed.
How you doing?
Thank you. Some good memories. Right. Yeah. So we made a lot of chili from there. Right. I remember when your dad was in this
Right here, sir. 2 seconds. I need 3 guys. Ready? One more.
we're on item 3C of the council agenda. This is the notification to the council of the vice mayor. Skip Kelly will be serving as vice mayor on a rotating basis. Skip, thanks you for accepting that role. Item 3D and E are appointments. I'll accept the motion on both. Comments or questions on item 3D or E? All right, cast your votes. Those appointments are approved unanimously. Move on to item 4. This is the Journal of Council Proceedings. Item 4A is to receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for April 5th, and item 4B is to approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for March 29th. Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the Journal? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. On item 5, these are requests for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, a couple this morning. On page 6, there's an agreement with the Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City. Councilman Shadid has asked that we continue that for a 2-week period. I would ask that we go ahead and do the presentation first so we can get the information out and answer any questions council would have, and then do the continuance on that item so we can get that item out.
Which item is that, Jim?
That's item Q, 6Q on page 6.
6Q, okay.
And then on page 15, under item 8F1, A, 4107 South Agnew, we'd ask that we strike that to re-notify a mortgage holder. Item C, 6209 South Land, I'd ask that that be stricken. We need to notify a new owner. Item D, 3125 North McKinley, we ask that that be stricken. We need to notify a new mortgage holder. Item F, 1016 North Warren, we ask that that be stricken to rework additional violations. Item G, 3228 Northeast 15th, we ask that that be stricken to rework for additional violations. And item H, 801 Southwest 25th Street, we ask that item be stricken. The owner has secured.
All right, any other requests for uncontested continuances? I'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. There are 6 items. Any comments or questions on the MFA? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCMFA, reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket.
Mayor, in response to some questions the council has brought up, we do have a couple of presentations this morning. I did mention that we have the presentation on item Q on the Alliance. We also have a presentation on the Gold Dome. Russell Klaus is here to talk about that for a couple of minutes on items G. And Councilman Ryan and Councilman McAtee have requested a presentation on item Q. And so there may be other items that need to be pulled off the
Okay, and the Alliance is item AD.
Oh, it is.
AC and AD, I guess, actually.
AD. Yes, it is AD. You're
AD.
correct. I was wrong. I said, you are correct.
So Q's good to go?
It is, but we do have a presentation on that.
All right.
I had highlighted them both, and I just looked at my orange markings by mistake.
Okay, so the continuance is on item AD.
Yes, I apologize for that.
Motion. Do we have a second on the consent docket? All right, thanks. All right, go ahead and take a list for council comments if anybody knows they want to comment or have a question about any item.
I have a question on item 6B5.
B5?
B5.
Okay.
Acre 5.
And Mayor, if I could just make a comment on 6AC.
Okay. All right, Tom, you want to go ahead and get with the presentation? This is on the Ford Center renovations and improvements that are being made.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Tom Anderson, City Manager's Office. Pardon me. The item for council consideration today is amendment number 2 to the amended and restated contract for architectural services for the arena expansion and renovation project with the company formerly known as the Benham Group. It's an increase to their contract of $738,745 This was presented to the Sports Facility Oversight Board and approved unanimously last week, April 7th. By way of background, we initially engaged the Benham Group for a preliminary design study when the prospect occurred that we may be able to acquire an NBA franchise. They performed a number of services, including a preliminary design for the improvements to the Oklahoma City Arena. The intent of this contract was for them to proceed in an expedited manner to define the final space program and refine concept layouts. This was integral for us to determine the best course of action for development and get a final program design and construct the arena in consideration of the event schedule of the arena and also for the arena to meet current NBA requirements. Also, we were expecting that we would be presenting for consideration of the voters a special election for a dedicated sales tax to in order to fund these improvements to the arena, and the Board of Governors of the NBA would be coming to evaluate these improvements and vote on whether Oklahoma City would be a suitable site for an NBA franchise. Subsequently, the voters did in fact approve that sales tax to make these improvements, and Benham's contract was amended in the amount of $8,991,500 for a total revised cost of $9.2 million, and the scope of work was for 7 tasks, including initial design project scoping services, schematic and design development services, construction document services, bidding services, construction administration service, construction observation services, both anticipated to be for a period of 18 months, and as-built design services. Originally, in the fall of 2007, when we did the sales tax projections, our sales tax was coming in very favorably, and we projected sales tax during the duration of the 15-month sales tax for the sports facility projects to be in the range of 3.5%. About halfway through the project, because of the recession, we experienced a revenue shortfall. We were about 12 to 13% below original projections. So proactive measures were needed for us to ensure that the projects were completed in the quality expected by the taxpayers and also to be compliant with NBA requirements. So we went into a redesign phase of the arena renovations and value engineered that project in a manner that would minimally impact patrons and still maintain the quality that was expected. Because of the tight construction window that was necessary and in order to ensure the financial integrity of the project, this did delay the construction schedule for the arena. It was anticipated initially to be completed in the fall of 2010. This delayed the completion of the project to the spring of 2012 because we had to step back, redesign, and reprogram construction over additional summer periods. So this is resulting in additional A&E services for contract oversight, monitoring, and reporting. We also did benefit from significant budgeted savings at the NBA practice facility. It was originally budgeted at $20 million. We experienced a number of savings, significant savings on land acquisition, which was programmed at $2 million. We acquired the site at just a little more than $500,000. And also on the construction contract for the facility, we were expecting it to cost about $15-16 million, and the original contract came in just over $10 million. Next slide, please. Amendment number 1 with Benham, total contract amount increased to $9.7 million. The amendment number 1 total was $500,000. This was in light of some of the changes in the scope of work. It was work performed by Benham for presentation lighting, point of sale system, which has to do with the concessions system within the facility, going from standalone cash registers to an integrated computerized system that enables greater accountability, outfitting and of a broadcast control room and cabling, food and beverage carts. And then by breaking up the projects, we initially had 3 phases, and the work on phase B2 and B3 were part of the breakout of what was initially considered just one phase, phase B. Next slide, please. The current status, and this is what you're considering today, is an increase in A&E fees to Benham of $738,745 for a total amended amount of $10,480,245. This is a combination predominantly of work that has been added to their scope that was not covered in their original agreement nor in amendment number 1, and it's directly related to value engineering and breaking up the original conceived 3-phase projects into multiple phases. So they had to go in and separate phase C into 4 phases. The initial phase C, which is the general expansion, phase C1, which is the AV package, phase C2, which is signage, and C3, which is the office finish out, build out and finish out for the Thunder, and the Thunder is reimbursing us for the finish out portion. Additional construction projects, phase C1, C2, and C3. This is the actual construction project design work that they will do or have done already. As part of the value engineering, they deleted the warm-up court, which we felt was kind of low-hanging fruit. It was not needed by the NBA, nor was it needed by the collegiate events as expressed by them. We relocated the kid zone, which was originally planned to be up on the upper level, and reprogrammed down for the first floor concourse level. They did revisions to the locker room, family room, the club level flooring, restaurant areas, and graphics to the terrace clubs. As part of the AV, 8 audio-visual lines and proposed suite level upgrades. We have a distributed antenna system, and they provide consulting services to facilitate improvements to the wireless phone and technology services. If you try to use your cell phone in the arena, there are several dead spots, and we're working in negotiation with some carriers to get that rectified, and their consulting services were valuable in developing contracts associated with that. Enhanced AV and security, including review of contractor corrections with some of the AV cabling and fiber. When the arena projects were initiated, Project 180 was not even on the board. And so they've had to come in and coordinate some of the arena projects, particularly with the Southwest expansion with the Project 180 projects. So there's been some work there. Preparation of ad alternates, particularly with Phase C, C1, and C2. And the new services are for on-site observation for all arena Phase C phases. And this adds an additional 18 months to the project. And I might note that this is work that is ongoing right now. We contracted with Manhattan Construction for expansion of the facility on the south and southwest side of the arena. They are excavating at this time, so it was important that we get the A&E services on there to have observation and reporting back to us right now. Should this be approved, I wanted you to have a look at what the impact would be on the project's budget. Combined revenues, in spite of the shortfall, are estimated at $113.6 million. We did collect $104.8 in the sports facility sales tax. Again, the projection originally was $121 million. We're making up some of the balance with $8.4 million in the sports facility use tax, and it's estimated that we'll get reimbursed about $427,000 from the Thunder for build-out or finish-out of their office space. The estimated project expenses total $109.9 million, $91.7 for the arena renovations. This includes the relocation of the I-40 Robinson Street off-ramp, and it also includes a contingency of 5% or $1.8 million for the remaining projects of the arena renovations. We're looking at $16.2 million for the practice facility construction. That includes a contingency, again, of 5% for only the remaining projects moving forward. That's $61,000. On top of all that, we have an additional budgeted overall contingency of $1.9 million. So these are all budgeted contingencies in the event of change orders or if we should run into any kind of unforeseen circumstances as we conclude these projects. So including the expense of the proposed amendment number 2 to Benham's agreement, this leaves a remaining fund balance at this time of almost $3.7 million. That's in addition to the budgeted contingencies that we have at hand. So really the bottom line on this is that we're paying for work that Benham has already done that was beyond the scope of their original contracts, and in addition we're paying for work that is necessary for us to have observed and report back to us with respect to the Manhattan contract that's already in place. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Yeah, Pat, go ahead.
Just a comment, Your Honor, it's not a question. I wanted to congratulate the staff on the job they did in putting the presentation together. As Tom pointed out, this was approved by the Sports Facilities Oversight Board unanimously, but not without an awful lot of construction. And although we can't be precise about the amount of money that Benham's asked for was given in this amendment, there was considerable additional work. We were comfortable that the work that they had asked to accomplish was beyond the original scope of the contract. And we felt comfortable with the fact that there was a lot of additional work being done. The exact amount, we relied on the staff to determine what Benham was entitled to. And I think it's an example of what happens sometimes when we come up short in our MAPS revenue projections. There are some avenues available to us to re-engineer the contracts, re-engineer the projects, to deliver essentially what we promised to deliver, but at a reduced rate. So I think the staff deserves to be commended on this particular project.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out, we did have some commitments to the team, and that were also commitments to the NBA to have certain level of improvements done for the facility. And I've got to tell you, the team has been great to work with. I've heard horror stories of teams coming in and being demanding and unreasonable and such, and I cannot say that about the Thunder. The Thunder has been with us through all the meetings. They sit there and they were a part of every decision we made and helped us get to where we need to be to meet their contractual obligations to the NBA, their expectations to their fans, and still be able to meet the budget. So it's been a good working relationship. And what Tom didn't mention is one of our new challenges now is Manhattan is under construction for the improvements, but we need to get into the building. We need to do some improvements within the existing Ford Center. And the further the Thunder go into the playoffs, the less time we're going to have to get those improvements done. So it's kind of a double-edged sword at this point in time, because the further they go in the playoffs, the later we're going to be able to get into the building and get our improvements done that need to be done within the building for the summer.
The facilities group didn't think it was a double-edged sword. The facilities group did not think it was a double-edged sword. We were all in the Thunder's camp on this one.
Regard about how far they go in the playoffs?
Not at this time.
Okay. I do have a question, and I really just need someone to refresh my memory about what our commitment was with regard to the use tax on this particular building. Was the use tax originally designed to be part of the construction?
No.
Okay, so because of the shortfall in the projection, we were forced to use the use tax.
That's correct.
And our original plan to use the use tax had been?
It would have been at council discretion.
It would have been what?
At council discretion.
Okay.
It was unobligated.
Okay.
If I could, I'd really just like to compliment the staff as well and echo Pat's comments. This was hard and a lot of negotiation to get to the place where we are today, and it's been very concisely reported to us, and I really appreciate the attention to detail from City Manager's office. It was
well, and it shows the risk in trying to determine revenue numbers from a sales tax on a very short time frame. And when you go 15 months down the line, you are taking a level of risk on the revenue side. And unfortunately for this particular project, they came up on the short end. And hopefully we'll do better on our longer projects, and that's been our history. But these short ones, I think we learned a lesson that there's a level of risk here that we had not anticipated.
And just to highlight that a little bit, when we started off on Maps for Kids, which was a 7-year program on the sales tax, there was another recession back in 2001, right after we started that sales tax. And when we started that, we were under target on sales tax receipts for, 5 years, I think, or something along those lines. We had estimated $512 million, and at the end we got $514 million because the recession had come back. And so over a 7-year period, we came out, and I can say that was great planning by staff, but sometimes it's better to be good or lucky than good on some of those things, because we were clearly under budget. MAPS 3, it's a different story. As we're starting out, we're ahead of the curve. We're doing very well on our collections on MAPS 3, and I guess what I'm telling you is please be conservative and caution as we go forward, because my guess is there's going to be some type of dip in the economy over the next 7 years, and so we just need to be cautious as we go forward. We're in great shape at this point in time. However, we're in for the long haul.
Any other comments or questions for Tom and the arena improvements? All right. Pat, other comments from you? All right.
I would recommend we do this because I think it's money well spent.
All right. We have a motion and a second on the consent docket. Are we ready to go? All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
We had a couple of presentations on the consent docket, so if we can go. If we can go back, let's bring Russell up first. Russell,
I hate when democracy gets in the way
of good government.
Of good government, yeah. It's a real thing. I'm sorry, Russell. I didn't mean to move forward without you.
Well, that was fine. On the Gold Dome, I wanted to clarify that this proposal before you today is to pay off our commitment to the federal government. When we initially supported the Gold Dome, we borrowed $1 million through the Section 108 loan program to be able to facilitate Dr. Lamb being able to renovate the building. We are obligated to pay that back, and we have been paying that back over time. We've had a program to pay back all of our 108 commitments, and other projects that we've now completely paid off include Dell, the Skirvin, and the American Indian Cultural Center. We allocate funds every year to be able to do that repayment. We're also allocating funds that we've recaptured from funds not spent last year, as well as program income, to be able to pay this off. And we're doing this because it gives us a better debt capacity in case other projects come to the fore, and in light of current wranglings in Washington, D.C. about the amount of allocation for CDBG, we wanted to make sure that we had this paid off and we're free of debt in that respect. We do have some other commitments, but they're very minor, so our capacity is actually in pretty good shape. But we wanted to make, go ahead.
No, I just want to, you're making the point very well, but what we're doing is this has nothing to do with current situations at the Gold Dome. This is our decision to pay off our obligation earlier.
Right.
But it doesn't in any way diminish Dr. Lamb's obligation to continue to repay.
It does not, no, and that is, we have been in ongoing discussions with Dr. Lamb, and we will continue those. I know that she has, issues with at least one of her tenants at this point in time, but our intent is to continue those negotiations as she stabilizes here in the next couple of months, and then we'll renegotiate those terms.
What is the ultimate leverage that we have to use in the event that these funds are not paid back?
Well, we are in a second position. There's a private financial institution that has the primary mortgage on the property, so we're in a second position. We did ask for a personal guarantee at the time as well.
So do we have a personal guarantee?
I believe so.
What is the interest rate of the loan that we're paying off? What are we being charged by the HUD or whomever it is?
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you on that, Councilman. Usually it's LIBOR. Steve has that number. He has all the numbers.
On all of our 108 loans that are in interim financing, we pay the LIBOR rate plus 20. So it fluctuates. Every quarter, it could be, right now we're paying around 1%. A year ago or 2 years ago, we were paying about 5.5%. So it does fluctuate. And this, repaying the debt now takes that uncertainty out of our loan.
Can we borrow money at 1%?
Only under the Section 108 program can we get the money at that level. And again, it's variable until we go into permanent financing. Once we go into permanent financing, the rate is locked in, and there's no prepayment until the term of the note is paid out.
I'm concerned that I can understand the flexibility side of it, that we'd like to be more flexible about things we could do. I'm looking at just the pure economic side of it. If we owe $900,000 or whatever this is, and we get it at 1%, wouldn't we be better off to continue to pay that than we would, because we borrow money?
Yeah, but Pete, we're paying this back with other federal monies. We're not using operating funds to pay this loan back.
Well, that's part of my question. Is there a way to supplement this with money that we're paying a higher interest rate on?
Well, but we're not paying any interest rate on the money we're using to pay this thing off with.
We're not earning any interest.
We're not earning any interest at this point. We're using federal money to pay off.
I understand that. That's that free money that comes to all of us from the feds. I fully understand that.
No, it's just it's not coming to us. We're just shuffling it around. This thing.
My point is there other money that we are paying interest on that could be utilized if we didn't, that we could utilize some of this other money for? Is there a way? I just hate to see us pay off something with a 1% loan, and I understand that's oversimplification, so you don't have to shame me about how stupid I am, but I do understand that but it seems to me that if you're paying off, you've got $1 million loan out here that you're paying a 1% on, and you've got other money that you're paying substantially more than 1%, some work could be done to try to figure out if you could use some of that money to pay this. I trust the staff, and if you tell me that's impossible, I'll be quiet. But
in essence, we're not receiving interest on those federal dollars.
I know that.
Well, but so we can't use that money. Money is sometimes fungible. This money is not necessarily fungible because we can't use that and invest that in other funds or replace that for money that we can invest in other funds. If we could, Councilman, that would be that would make some sense to do so. Our borrowing rate out there is kind of, quite frankly, all over the place right now. Interest rates are down. I think we're paying less than 1% on commercial paper right now that the Water Trust is using. It's down to, we have some very good issues out there that's pretty low. Fixed rate right now, on our GOs and our revenue bonds we're paying off from the Water Trust are running from, from 3 to 4.5, somewhere in that range. So it's kind of all over the place right now is what you're seeing. And right now, fixed rate is quite a bit higher than variable rates. And the commercial paper is about as low as it's ever been.
So the answer is there isn't any way to do what I'm asking.
No, as the city manager said, these funds really aren't that fungible. We're not paying interest on any of the other, we don't have any other funds out there that we're paying interest on through the federal programs, and to be able to use those funds, there are a lot of different caveats attached to the use of the funds. So they're not interchangeable with.
Have we looked at the value of the programs that we will not be able to do by paying this ahead of time?
Well, actually, this frees us up to be able to do more programs because this is getting a debt off our books. It will increase our capacity in case additional economic development projects come along.
Are you saying that the money that we're paying it with would just be laying there and we wouldn't be using it for anything?
Well, no, but we had set aside funds. We've set aside funds over a long period of time to be able to pay off these debts. So this is the final resolution of this particular debt. That will then free up capacity, which we're intending to dedicate to other purposes.
Are no projects being foregone by the use of this $1 million? No. What would we have done with it? I'm back to my original sarcastic remark. What would we have done with it if we weren't paying it off?
We could have retained it when we can carry money forward. We have certain capacity
But we
there.
couldn't have used it. I tell you, I trust you. I don't quite understand.
Well, we do intend to apply this surplus going forward to a stronger effort in neighbourhoods is our objective.
It could have been used forward. It could have been carried forward and used for future projects that we use CBDG funds type projects for in future years. So, if that's more valuable than paying off that debt, that's something that's a policy that the council can make.
Well, that's my question. Is there something that is of more consequence? Is there a project that we think would have a greater return on investment than this one, than paying off this one?
Not that I'm immediately aware of.
Okay.
We're open to suggestions.
If I could, and Steve, maybe you can correct my memory, but my recollection of service on that committee for a number of years is that if we carry forward too many dollars, it impacts the allocations going forward, and so that, in effect, could limit, Pete, the projects that we could do if we carry too many dollars forward. And we also, it seems like we build into the budget every single year debt repayment capabilities so that it's not taking away from any other projects. It's part of the approved budget that goes to HUD on an annual basis.
This is the first time in a very long time that we've actually been free of this kind of debt. Because of those three other larger projects that I mentioned, we've had a very substantial commitment to pay those off over a long period of time. Now that we've got to that point, we felt that it made sense to pay off this remaining obligation so that we have that capacity that Councilman Salyer was talking about.
My final comment is, with the Congress's apparent desire to reduce the deficit to the point that they stop Medicare, surely they're going to stop CDBG if they stop Medicare. So what assurance do we have that we will be able to get more money by this reduction as opposed to keeping the money we've got and finding other projects that are legitimate to use with that $1 million?
It provides no assurance at all, and I doubt that they would be looking at what we repaid as any part of the argument on the discussion on CDBG.
I don't think it will, but the arguments are very sweeping on the federal level. They're just eliminate everything.
Right.
Anything where you cut taxes and reduce services to the point where, and that's the argument on the federal level. And so it would seem to me, if Medicare is a target, which I find it almost impossible to believe that it is, but if it is a target, CDBG is as we heard a moment ago, is low. That's the low-hanging fruit for things they can cut. So if we put ourselves in a situation where we prepaid $1 million worth of CDBG and then find CDBG cut next year, then we've kind of cut our nose off to our face, it seems to me.
Well, we still have the obligation that we need to pay this back, and we've been paying that back with CBDC, Community Development Block Grant dollars. And if that goes away, we still have that obligation out there that we're going to have to come up with alternate funds to do that. So there are pros and cons on that.
Well, I understand. It's just hard for me to conceive that we don't have other projects that the expenditure of the money wouldn't return us more than the 1% interest rate that we're paying. I would hope that you spend $1 million of CDBG money, you get a return on investment that exceeds 1%. Maybe not financial investment, but certainly investment in terms of what it gives the community back. Not direct financial, but certainly if CDBG is worth anything, it's worth 1% of the capital invested in it in terms of quality of life, and it ought to be generating sales tax. I mean, some of it ought to be put in places where it makes it more convenient or better to do business, and so sales tax increases also. I'm just troubled by that philosophy when we're looking down the pike, or down the pipe, it seems to me, at serious reductions in federal money.
And again, one of the things that this is a variable rate at 1% at this point in time. With the fears of the economy, and if inflation were to set in, it could be back up to a 5% loan in 18 months. And again, I don't know that. I'm not predicting that, but there are uncertainties in that set of things too.
All right. Yeah, Larry?
Jim, I wonder if you'd help me out, or Russell or somebody. As we move forward, we owe this $1 million.
Yes, sir.
And so, assuming we're going to vote to do that, we vote to pay that off. Once that's paid off, what is the city's obligations from this day forward, and what is the projection? I heard Russell mention a couple of things that we're in negotiations, that Dr. Ram has some difficulty with one of her tenants. What are we looking for? What are we looking at in the future as far as risk and getting money back as we move forward?
I think there is some risk out there, but I cannot quantify that at this time.
We are hopeful. I think Dr. Lamb has made some significant progress in the last couple of months in some of her personal financial issues, and I don't want to get into those here, but we're hopeful that we can renegotiate the terms of the agreement between her and us so that we can better protect the funds that are still owing to us, and that we will be able to recapture those. That's our intent. This item today pays off our obligation with the federal government, so it removes that piece of it. So we no longer have that middleman. It's a direct relationship between us and Dr. Lamb from here going forward.
So we're anticipating X amount of dollars that she is going to pay us over the years ahead.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And this prepayment to the feds doesn't affect that in any way?
No, it does not.
First of all, I know this is a very difficult issue for staff, and this came before our committee, and it was well vented in reference to the questions from the members of the committee. This is not the only project that I think that we have an issue with in reference to funds not being generated. And we have received the commitment from staff that they are going to revisit this whole program in the future to make sure that we have a little bit more oversight and protection as it relates to these funds that we let out. The unfortunate part of this is that, many of the ties and the conditions that you're faced with is just the life of federal funds. And I think that what Pete has said needs to be well vetted in reference to the community, is that we depend on these federal funds, and we depend on the federal funds for a lot of infrastructure projects and a lot of quality of life projects in our city, as all other cities do. And so, it's unfortunate, and I don't want to, I asked the question initially, but I know from our committee that this doctor is not the only person that is in a situation in which funds have been received and the outcome has not been as beautiful as they were expected from the beginning. And of course, nobody really ever knows from the beginning. You always go into these projects with a hope and and a prayer that things are going to work out the way they're supposed to. But again, I think that, it is a serious concern that we need to revisit the whole application process and the guarantee of these funds from those individuals who are going into business or are seeking any type of assistance from the city in these programs. But I personally know that this has been a challenge for you all, and I think the way that you all came to the committee and presented this to our committee, and it's just one of those situations that we have to live and bear with, because we ask for federal funds, and I hope we continue to ask for federal funds. As taxpayers, we pay taxes to the federal government, but at the same time, sometimes people tend to think that we shouldn't be, or we don't depend on funds from the federal government. And so for all those who are out there talking about cutting funding and everything like that, this is one of the truisms of what you get. And it's just one of many projects. This one is not as working as well as it should be, but there are projects that we have partnership with those funds that are doing a great job. So that's my comment.
Okay. Any other questions for Russell?
Mayor, I'd like to vote on this separately. Because I want to vote against it, and I want to make myself clear. I'm not voting against this kind of a project. This kind of a project is a risky project, as the Skirvin was a risky project. These projects won't get done by the private sector. The public sector has to step up and do this kind of project. I understand that completely. What I'm voting against is the expenditure of $1 million today that we don't have to pay without my own being satisfied that we couldn't have used that $1 million for some other purpose. That's it. I don't want you to understand, Russell, not that I don't trust your judgment on whether this is about what you've told me, because I do completely. But I don't think we ought to prepay $1 million that we're paying 1% interest on without a thorough vetting of all the other things that money could be used for.
Okay. In regards to Pete's comments, I'm going to ask a question. If the CBG money is cut off, as people speculate it might be, what would be the source of repayment to that loan, assuming that Dr. Lamb's position doesn't change?
To the federal government?
Yes. Would we be obligated to use general fund money to repay that loan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the alternative we're looking at is if we don't do this and CBG money is cut back, we'll use the general fund money to pay back that loan.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, Pete, technically we've already voted, so we're going to need a motion for you to rescind.
I voted for it, so I will move or rescind the previous action.
All right. Do we need a second on that? Yes. And vote. Okay, so we're voting to rescind the previous action of passing the consent docket. Cast your votes, and that is rescinded. Now, we need a motion for all items except...
So move.
Except the item that we've been discussing. Motion and a second. Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. Now we're going to vote on the item that we've been discussing individually. Do we have a motion? Okay. We're voting on item 6G. A yes vote would move forward in the manner in which we had planned and has been suggested on the agenda. All right, cast your votes.
I think we've talked quite a bit about $1 million, and it's actually $874,000, right? I know you're an accountant, too.
All right, so let's cast our votes. And the item passes by a count of 7-2. We're on to the concurrence docket.
Well, wait a minute.
No, we're not?
We're getting close.
Gosh, I'm trying to get to that concurrence docket as fast as
Ms.
possible.
O'Connor is here to give a presentation to us a little bit of the concept of the alliance. Now, we've continued that item for 2 weeks, but we thought it would be good to lay that out before council this morning.
Okay.
Good morning. I think I kind of lost track of what happened to this item, but we wanted to take some time this morning to kind of walk through the idea behind developing a plan that better institutionalizes some of our economic development practices in the agreement that was on the consent docket for today. First of all, I'd like to say that we've been working for some time now on trying to develop a plan that helped us to institutionalize our economic development practices. You know, we've had a great deal of success in the past using this kind of ad hoc, pull resources from wherever we can get them approach to some very complicated projects. But we knew that there were several things coming in the future that might make that more difficult to do and would change the environment in which we were working in. And some of those include changes in leadership that we saw coming in the future, changes in leadership at the Urban Renewal Authority, the passing of Paul Strasbaugh, who headed up the Industrial and Cultural Facilities Trust and the Oklahoma Industries Authority. All of those things contributed to creating this environment where we knew it would be more difficult in the future to just kind of on an ad hoc basis pull together people and resources. There were also several other events that were happening at about the same time, and those included things like the passage of the GOLT bond authorization that created our local economic development incentive fund, the passage of MAPS 3, and the realization that that level of public investment created great opportunities for private investment in the community as well. TIF funding and TIF projects, we've seen a lot of TIF projects in the downtown in the last year or so with the creation of TIF District Number 8, the approval of the Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Plan and the implications that implementing that plan has on the Urban Renewal Authority, and then our natural optimism about our local economy and hopefully recovery in the national economy and being positioned to take advantage of those things. We felt were very important events that helped shape the plan and what we thought we needed to do in the future. So again, the plan was designed to build on past successes, things like Dell and the Skirvin and Bass Pro Shops, and to develop a full-time focus on implementing economic development projects using best practices. So the goals were to eliminate the duplication of resources and effort, to provide a more efficient, coordinated delivery of economic development services to the community, to clarify the roles and assignment of resources to projects, and develop a structure that could be responsive to many different policy-making boards. So the structure that we determined was that a new not-for-profit entity would best meet these goals, so that a new not-for-profit organization was created, and the board of directors was to be made up of somebody representing the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust, someone from the Urban Renewal Authority, someone from the Industrial and Cultural Facilities Trust, someone from the Oklahoma Industries Authority, the city manager, and 2 at-large members. And at least 1 board member has to be a member of the city council. Some clarification about what the Alliance's role will be in the future. And I kind of started out thinking about this, about what the Alliance won't do. And first of all, the Alliance will not be a policy-making board. Policies about economic development and projects will be set by the entities that are involved, by the City Council, by the Economic Development Trust, by the Urban Renewal Authority, and its related entities, and the INC Trust and the OIA. The Alliance won't decide whether or not to do a project or to fund a project. Those decisions will be made by the policy-making boards. Now, it will make recommendations, just as staff does for the city now, and it won't select a redeveloper. Those decisions and responsibilities continue to lie with the policy-making boards that the Alliance would represent. But the Alliance will focus on management, planning, and administration of the GOLT program, the city's TIF program, our retail strategies, and our other economic development policies. It will focus on job creation, site development. One of the things that we sometimes have to do is identify sites for major industries to locate in Oklahoma City. So that will be something that we'll work on. The planning and coordination of the MAPS projects, and especially the role of trying to maximize the private investment that can be created by the MAPS 3 projects. There are a lot of decisions and information and things that we need to look at as we consider the MAPS projects so that we can design those projects and develop those projects in a way that maximizes that private investment. Everything from transit-oriented development to residential development, maybe near the park, other mixed-use development that might happen in conjunction with the convention center development. All of those things need planning and attention so that we can maximize that private investment in the community. And the Alliance will help implement financings associated with projects. The services are expected to be provided to the City of Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust, the Urban Renewal Authority, the Oklahoma Industries Authority, and the Industrial and Cultural Facilities Trust. I think that there's the possibility that other trusts and entities might be involved in the future on a project-by-project basis. There may be situations where COTPA might want to be involved if we're working on parking garages or the Riverfront Redevelopment Authority or even the Airport Trust. So I think that a lot of this remains to be seen and will be addressed on a project-by-project basis. I know there have been some questions about why a not-for-profit entity, and one of the things that we were trying to do is to create an entity that could respond to a diverse set of clients that have a long history of being independent and that report to different policymaking boards. For example, the Oklahoma Industries Authority is a county beneficiary trust. It is not a city trust. So we were interested in finding a mechanism that allowed us to create this kind of overarching management and administrative function without upsetting the apple cart too much with some of those policymaking boards. One of the other things that a not-for-profit has that sometimes the city doesn't is the ability to be very flexible and responsive in using consultants and gathering other resources for projects. We all know that hiring employees and approving contracts and getting resources for things can sometimes be complicated at the city, and that this entity will be very project-focused. It will be necessary at times to staff up or to gather resources for an especially complicated project and then scale back when that project's finished. And we need the flexibility to be able to do that. And again, it's a service provider. It is not a policymaker, and it was felt that a not-for-profit provided that kind of flexibility as well. And the other thing that we learned on doing research and trips to some other communities was that this is a structure that's been successfully used in several other cities. Some of the most applicable examples were the Economic Development Corporation of Kansas City, the St. Louis Redevelopment Corporation, and the Louisville Downtown Development Corporation. A lot of other cities create these kind of not-for-profit entities on a project-by-project or very specific kind of basis, but these provide that kind of overarching service delivery to many, many different agencies, and it typically does include TIF districts and urban renewal authorities and those kinds of things. The scope of work that's addressed in the contract that was included in your packet was that the Alliance would serve as the city's lead economic development entity. We would create this one-stop shop for trying to manage economic development projects. It would manage the city's TIF program. It would provide oversight and coordination for Project 180. There's some communication things that happen with Project 180 and this kind of general oversight that would continue. Provide oversight and coordination for the city's general obligation limited tax bond program, which is our local economic development incentive fund. Be a liaison to the Myriad Gardens Foundation and management of the Myriad Botanical Gardens. One of the things that we've been working on for the past few months is negotiating an agreement for the management and operations of, a new agreement for the management and operations of the Myriad Botanical Gardens with the foundation, and that's been kind of this new approach to park governance and park management that we haven't had in the past. Facilitate the examination of existing and future downtown parking garages. There's a parking study underway right now that we think will come back with some recommendations about the future, and we need to be prepared to begin to address those because it takes a long time to build parking garages. Leverage MAPS 3 to encourage private investment. I've talked quite a bit about that, but we do believe we have a great opportunity to begin to plan for how we leverage the MAPS 3 projects. Facilitate the implementation of land use strategies. The Planning Department has prepared several different plans that impact the downtown area, including the Core to Shore Plan. So one of the roles will be to work with some of the other entities on facilitating those land use implementation strategies. And then provide periodic review of our economic development incentive policies. We're currently in the process of reviewing our retail incentive policies because some of you have expressed a concern about whether or not they really address our retail needs. And we also need to periodically review our economic development incentive policies for job creation as well. The agreement requires that there will be at least quarterly reports to the trust and/or the city council, and reports are broadly defined in the agreement so that if there's something in particular that the council or the trust would like to see on a regular basis, we can provide that. There is an annual work plan for the professional services to be provided that is to be approved each year by the trust and the city, and then the fee is also a part of that process. The agreement also requires that certain employees will be provided by the city to work with the Alliance, and those include staff in the city manager's office and the municipal counselor's office, and in the future it may include people from other departments as well. The agreement with the city and the trust, this is the breakout of the funding. The first year is the interim period between May 1st and the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, for $56,000 to be provided by the administrative funds in the TIF and GOLT bond programs. And then for fiscal year 11-12, this is the breakout for the other funding sources. The other entities that the Alliance will contract with will also provide funding for services, and those agreements have not been reached yet nor negotiated, so those are still a work in progress. So how will we achieve efficiencies in all of this? You know, I think that the biggest thing is that we plan to eliminate the duplication of effort and resources that are now associated with our economic development efforts. The president of the Alliance will serve as the executive director of the Urban Renewal Authority, the general manager of the INC Trust and the OIA, surrogate general manager of the OCEDT. So all of those roles, some of which are part-time right now. The INC Trust and the OIA is definitely a part-time role, will be rolled up into one position and one agency to provide the services associated with the general manager activities. And then that frees up resources to help improve redevelopment services or that could go for other activities. It will free up resources in different ways in the different organizations that are involved. The city will have a different kind of impact than maybe the Urban Renewal Authority will. So, and I think that, you know, one of the things is that in the future, as we go through this transitional period and work through some of the details, that we'll find other resources and staffing issues that will help us become more efficient and provide a more focused delivery of services. So in summary, the creation of the Alliance and the agreement that's before you are designed to institutionalize our existing approach to economic development services, create a one-stop shop for economic development projects, implement a more efficient and focused delivery of services, and create a structure to help us more effectively compete with other cities. You know, we need to continue to be a place where it's friendly to do business and that we can respond quickly to projects when they come forward. And we think that that's an important byproduct of this kind of reorganization. So with that, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions or...
Meg, you had asked to speak on this item earlier. Do you want to hold on, or do you want to speak at this point? Okay. Pete?
Before I start with some questions, I would like to comment that when this was presented a couple of months ago, the whole as a general concept, I was very supportive at that time, and I continue to be supportive of the concept. As Ross Perot taught us 19 years ago, the devil is in the details, though, and so when we start looking at the details of this thing, I have some serious concerns about it. In the past, my feeling has always been, although these were done through ad hoc committees, that the council and the city always was totally in the driver's seat. Now, whether that was true or not, I don't know, but it's a feeling I had, that we were in the driver's seat. It is obvious by the makeup of this that we're not in the driver's seat. Now, I understand that everything would have to come back here to be approved, but that's not the same as being in the driver's seat. Because if there are 5 options out here and a group of people, especially as powerful as the group of people that are selected here, come up with an option, it's really not a fair shot to bring that option back here and say we've got the right to do it or not do it. I mean, that's, as a practical political matter, we are giving that decision-making authority away. Now, that's how I perceive it. Second, and I don't expect you to answer them now, but I'd like over the next couple of weeks to either get the answers or have them ready in a presentation 2 weeks from now, or talk to me, whatever. But I just want to kind of list them out here publicly. I'm also struck by the lack of diversity of this group that you're talking about. Both geographic diversity, which it doesn't exist, and ethnic diversity, which doesn't exist. When we talk about one of the big things that I would like to see this address, and you alluded to it toward the end of your conversation, has to do with the revision of our retail policy. The biggest place where we're leaking retail revenues is in South Oklahoma City. Not anybody from South Oklahoma City is on this at all. No one. That's a comment, and that's just, I don't need to go any further with it, and I don't expect you to respond to it. And by the look on your face, I suspect you agree with me to some extent. But you can give another look and change all that if you choose.
Diversity is something we struggle with.
The next thing, my concern is that I don't know why it couldn't. Anybody that's listened to me for the last 30 years I've been on the council knows how badly I detest bodies that where money is being expended that's not in control of the council. I mean, the water trust used to be that way, the sewer trust was that way, the airport trust changed just recently from being that way, and so that troubles me a little bit. And again, that's probably a longer answer than you want to make here, but I would be prepared to talk about that some at some point in time.
Well, the one thing that I will say about that comment and your first comment is that the Alliance is not a policy-making board. All of the entities that you just listed make policy for city operations and vote on expenditure of funds for the airport trust and the water trust. This organization won't do that. It is not a policy-making entity. It is the staff, in effect, for the city or the Economic Development Trust or whatever entity chooses to contract with them. And as staff does now, we bring forward recommendations to the policymakers for you all to examine the pros and the cons and make decisions. And that's how this will work in the future. It is not designed as an entity that replaces or supplants the policymaking boards. And we can talk about that further, but that's really how this is set up. as an administrative entity, not a policymaking entity.
I completely agree with you in the way it's not designed to be but it will make policy in the same sense that the MAPS 3 committee on the convention is going to make policy. They're going to winnow these things down to one convention site. This is an analogy. And when all these high-powered people, and I'm glad they all volunteered to do that, but when all these people vote on, they decide on one convention site, and it comes through the MAPS committee, it comes back up here, anybody on this horseshoe that opposes that's going to look like Jesse James. So it is not a pure non-policy thing. The mechanics of it may not be a policy, but they are going to drive policy in a way that politically it's very difficult for us to get around. And so for that reason, I would at least want more council members on it so that there are more council people involved in this process so that when that policy comes back to people that are naturally a little bit suspicious like me, I'm going to be able to talk to somebody across the horseshoe from me that was on that committee. I've appreciated that in all these new trusts we've formed and been on the MAPS Trust. Councilman McAtee has served a year, and if I have a question about anything about the MAPS 3 Trust, I can go to Larry, who attended every one of those meetings, and I like that. So I would like to see more of that. We're dealing with a big deal here. The next thing is I worry that we have, by creating a not-for-profit, a private not-for-profit, we have circumvented the open records rules. And I've seen, and we have all witnessed, an atrocity with regard to the failure to have records open in these last political campaigns. That's a blot on the history of this city, in my opinion, that we will have difficulty ever erasing. And to start a new entity that's not subject to open records, to me, is very, very problematic. And I understand, I'm not naive enough to not understand that when you're competing with entities to locate a business here, that sometimes open records gets in the way. But I think we've got to find a better way to do it than that. My last comment, probably not my last comment, but the last one on my list. The last one on my list is that you talked about the sources of, you talked about all these other partners. Don't most of these partners derive their revenue from us? OIA doesn't, I understand.
OIA does not. The INC Trust derives some revenue from us for the management of the Journal Record Building. The rest of it comes through their own resources. Urban Renewal receives funding through our CDBG program every year, but it also has other resources and other sources of income. But, some of it we may not know completely yet either, until we get into it a little bit more.
You don't have to answer all of them now, but it's coming back in 2 weeks, and I think the public deserves an answer to some of them, and since I'm here, I expect to get answers to the others.
We will do our best to get those to you, and I want to speak to the diversity issue on that. When you look in concept, we put this together, and you're looking at a representative off this group and a representative off that group. That seemed to make sense at the time we were putting that together. But then when the names came out of those groups, you're absolutely correct. It does not have either the geographic diversity nor the ethnic diversity. And so this is why we have an open calling process, sir. And you've expressed the desire, and as have others, to add some more members to it. And I think that can probably be done, and so we can add some more at-large members to that group.
I think the possibility exists that we don't make it a 20-man operation, because we won't get anything done if we do that. But I think we need to look at whether all these players are necessary, and then add some other players to solve some of these other questions I've raised. That's my
I understand.
Larry?
A couple of questions. Thank you for your presentation, Kathy. And some of the questions that Pete raised, I also have, so I won't belabor those. But a couple of the other ones that came up, on one of your slides, you indicated that this new group, the Alliance, would be involved in MAPS 3 projects. And not necessarily today. That seems to me outside the purview of this. I understand evaluating the private investment that goes along with it, but the way the slide read, I got the interpretation that now we've got another entity here that's going to be involved in the process of implementing MAPS 3, and I find that a little bit questionable.
If I can answer that for you, Mr. McAtee, a couple of things along those lines. Certainly for private economic development, as you mentioned, that to make sure that we maximize our private investment off MAPS 3, that's one of the focuses we're talking about. But right now, Kathy would become Executive Director of Urban Renewal. Well, Urban Renewal is involved in MAPS 3. They're presently now doing land acquisition for us on the Quarter Shore Park, and they're doing some other things that they're doing associated with that. So we're not talking about changing the structure. Eric Winger is still going to be in charge. The committees are going to be there, as Mr. White's committees here, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, are still going to be out there doing the thing. None of that is changing through that. But the fact of the matter is there are activities now that are presently being done for MAPS 3 by Urban Renewal.
If that was the intent of that bullet on the slide, I'm perfectly satisfied with that. You also made the statement, Kathy, that the Alliance would be the major economic development player, I guess. You didn't use the word player, but entity. How does that match up with, I thought that we had contracted as a council and a city with the Chamber of Commerce to be our major economic development entity?
Well, I think what we contract with the Chamber to do is business expansion and recruitment, marketing, those kinds of activities, and they'll continue to do those things. So the way we've kind of looked at this, it's their job to bring a prospect here, and then just like they do right now with the city, they come to me and my office, and we work together to put together whatever package of incentives they might need. The Alliance will do that piece of it. The Chamber will still have the responsibility for creating the leads, creating the job creation prospects, bringing them to the city, but the Chamber doesn't have the knowledge, the resources, the access to develop the incentive packages, whether it's identifying a site for a new company or participating in the local economic development incentive program. So that's kind of the distinction that's been made and how we see this working in the future.
And then I have two other questions real quick. You mentioned that this new organization would provide a more efficient way of getting the job done. That's kind of what you came back. Efficient to me means we're spending X amount of dollars in all these different entities, including the city and the like, to get the job done right now. More efficient to me would be that X is going to be reduced by putting all this together under that one office. I would like to see some definitive quantitative information to see if that is really going to be the case. And then the final comment is I see this as being, you used the term land use, I see this possibly, and it ties in with what Pete was talking about, more downtown focused and not total city focused. And I think that some attention needs to be, directed at that so that we can be assured that this is a citywide alliance effort to promote business and to put deals together rather than just downtown focus.
The intent was for it to be city.
It'll be both. And because Urban Renewal has specific responsibilities, Urban Renewal will be focused on their 3 urban renewal areas. However, the Economic Development Trust, with both Goldmans and TIFs, have a much broader array across the city. So that will be, of course, wherever those are within the city.
Well, John Michael knows one of my genius ideas that ties into Pete was to take the new Ward 5 councilman and stick him on the board to get some outside of downtown perspective on there. So
that works for me.
Yeah. David, I think, was next to speak, and then Skip.
Well, thank you. And I do appreciate Councilman Shadee requesting that this item be looked at a little bit further, because I do think there's plenty of questions that can be asked and addressed. First of all, with Councilman White, I certainly agree with the concern from South Oklahoma City as far as a loss of retail establishments, and I welcome any new idea that comes along that would help us create a better environment to attract retail establishments, especially along I-240, but not solely on I-240. There's other areas in the city, as Councilman McAtee has pointed out. Councilwoman Salyer's Capitol Hill District and other areas certainly need some assistance, and I think in those areas, retail development is very important. So I welcome this. I would like to ask a question. Would this organization be subject to annual audits by a CPA firm?
Yes, that's included in the agreement that we would provide that information.
And then the quarterly reports that you're referring to, would they include financial
They
information?
could, if that's what the council and the trust desires.
Okay. Well, I think, again, looking at it from the South Oklahoma City's perspective, we've lost a lot of retail establishments to our sister city in Moore and Norman and other communities. And like the great philosopher Billy Tubbs said, if you don't like losing, get better. So if this helps us to become better at attracting and developing retail establishments, I like the idea, but I think all these questions and concerns are valid, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks we'll be able to address those and concerns. Thank you.
Okay, Skip?
First of all, I believe if it's not fixed, if it's not broke, why do something new? Why do something different? Why change it? And, we get all these accolades all over the United States about the growth and the prosperity and the development of Oklahoma City and how we have created all these here magnificent projects at the hands of the staff that we have and the various committees that's been assigned to address those issues. So it kind of puzzles me that with MAPS being a success, MAPS 1, 2, and 3 both being success stories, the Thunder being a success story, the Skirvin Hotel being a success story, what was the drive to create something new anyway? That's my one statement. And then the other one is, as been stated by several other members, is that I have sat here for 2.5 years, and I've listened to the presentations from the chamber. I've listened to all the policies and had an opportunity to sit in on the economic development issues. And we all know that probably 70% of the development in this city that we pride ourselves on has been a part of this downtown Oklahoma City. And I truly think that there are citizens in this city who are really tired of just hearing about downtown Oklahoma City. We need a convention center, true enough. We need some traffic, upgrades, true enough, for downtown, and we pride, and I'm thankful that we have the basketball team, and it's doing a great job for revenue in the city of Oklahoma City. But I think sometimes we really forget that there's a south side of Oklahoma City, there's an east side of Oklahoma City, there's a north side of Oklahoma City, and there's a west side of Oklahoma City, and there's development that needs to be created in those areas where people live, and for services and for amenities and for necessities that are in those parts of the city. And we continue to just talk about a hub. And I guarantee you, if you took out MAPS 3 and you took out the convention center and you took out this major park that we're going to be developing, this probably never would have even came of an idea to anyone. Because I can't see why we can't start looking at northeast Oklahoma City. I don't want to talk about what it has lost. It's better said what was taken, what was stripped, and what was just removed. And I never hear anything about a major economic look of land in northeast Oklahoma City to bring a business of any type of resources at all. And I think the same thing has been clearly said about South Oklahoma City. And we tend to sit here and we have seen that South Oklahoma City is just basically being stripped of retail 90%, probably 60% of what was base retail in the south part of Oklahoma City is now in Moore, Oklahoma, and Norman, Oklahoma. And in the northeast quadrant of Oklahoma City, Edmond is benefiting greatly every day because of the retail leakage that's in northeast Oklahoma City. And when I look at all of this and I say, you can't buy a nail in my ward, you can't buy a hammer, you can't buy a piece of lumber. But you would think that even outside of that, that we would look at some of the land. You know, we talk about urban renewal. There's a lot of land in northeast quadrant of Oklahoma City. But I never hear anything come out of all these here programs that address anything about the traffic that's there and the need for some economic development. And this is why I have a problem with these type of programs, is that it seems like that we keep putting together committees, trust, that is doing the same thing that we already have in place. And if we're going to downsize, as Councilman McAtee stated, you know, if there are numbers that can show that this will work better than what we have based upon how much we're going to save, then it may be worth looking at. But I just think that we have a chamber in each quadrant of Oklahoma City. The South Chamber, what is supposed to be the Capital Chamber, Northwest Chamber. Where do these chambers fit in with this equation? I would like to think that if we did this, that we could at least reach out to the communities and the people in those communities that work in those various neighborhood associations, that keeps the fiber and the strength of those communities bonded together. Because they're the people that's going to ultimately come downtown Oklahoma City. They're the people that's going to come down here and help support every last one of these projects. But they don't get to serve on any of these committees. They don't get to serve on this trust. And I just think that we need to be, when we start talking about something of this magnitude, we really need to be a little bit more transparent in reference to what we have here in Oklahoma City of the people and the various quadrants of this city, and stop just making people feel like that you guys are just taking care of downtown Oklahoma City. Because I believe that there could be a time when downtown Oklahoma City is going to beg for those individuals who are not downtown, who don't live downtown, and we're going to beg for them to come downtown to support something. And I just think that, you know, we need to be a little bit more open about this whole project.
First of all, the structure is designed to be a citywide organization. It is not to be solely focused on downtown. And I do think that in the past we've had great successes, but many of us have other jobs and other responsibilities, and when we are pulled away to work on some of these big economic development projects, those other jobs go by the wayside. I mean, you know, you can't, there's just not enough hours in the day sometimes when you're working on the Skirvin Hotel or Dell Computers to get it all done. So I think that was one of the things, is that we were trying to develop a much more focused approach so that we would have the resources to address some of these concerns in, you know, throughout Oklahoma City. And I think, you know, you all know from the work that we've been trying to do with the Economic Development Committee that we do agree that things need to change in Northeast Oklahoma City or South Oklahoma City. And that's one of the reasons why we are taking a look at our retail policies. It's hard to compete with communities who are willing to give JCPenney's and Target incentives when in a city this large that takes sales tax money away from some other part of the community. You know, you're just churning sales tax revenues, but that's been a policy decision that we made, and maybe it's time to take another look at it. So all of those things are are on the radar and certainly a part of what we plan to do in the future.
Yeah, Gary?
Your Honor, excuse me. I'd just like to make a comment. I serve on the Economic Development Trust, and I feel, whether it was intentional or not, some of the comments this morning were critical of what that trust has done. I would like to point out a lot of the activities of the trust are not directed downtown. Some of our more successful projects are not associated with downtown at all. The Outlet Mall is far southwest Oklahoma City, not far southwest, far west Oklahoma City. Haymore is far northwest Oklahoma City. And we've done a lot of significant projects, a lot of good work. Boeing is not downtown project. And so the implication that the Oklahoma City Development Trust is focused exclusively on downtown is a misconception. We have had a number of very successful projects that were not related with downtown at all. I don't mean to be defensive, but I felt that there were some arrows being slung against our organization that were not well deserved. And I want to point out also that the most successful retail facility in Oklahoma City is not downtown Oklahoma City. Quail Springs is a long ways from downtown. And I think the implication that everything's been done recently has benefited only downtown is a false impression.
Yeah, and I'll add that in my lifetime, no part of the city has been more stripped of retail than downtown Oklahoma City. Meg, and then Gary. Fine. I'm just saying the idea that certain parts of the city have been neglected and we've lost retail, it also includes downtown. It's another part of the city that has lost retail. I mean, there's lots of places that have lost retail.
Has money been spent to try to bring it back more than downtown, though?
Agreed. Meg?
Just a sort of a big picture comment to synthesize some of these things. You know, Oklahoma City has had great successes, as everybody shared, but we certainly have had them. We've been smart, but we've also been lucky, and we've had the ability to pull these ad hoc groups together. And, you know, we look around the country, and economic development is a really competitive game these days. And so as you're looking at, you know, regions around the country, I know a lot of homework was done on other successful programs like this. We're competing on a daily basis with our sister cities in the region to try to, you know, whether it's a convention hotel or amassing land in a land bank to put a project. We're competing fiercely every day, and a focused approach, I think, is the direction that we were trying to go, rather than just put together a group when a project lands in our lap. And so I think there is some merit here in taking a look at a different approach.
Okay. Gary?
Well, I don't want this to sound like I'm downplaying anything that's been said, because I understand everybody's concerns that's voiced them so far, and I think there's some very valid concerns out there. And I applaud waiting 2 weeks till we get some of those answers. But sometimes the old fireman in me wants to get back and focus where the fire is, actually. And we're not being asked to form this alliance. The alliance has already been formed. And what we're asked to vote on is a contract with the alliance to provide the services that were detailed in the presentation. And the fact that it's a board, it's an alliance, it's a not-for-profit, that we don't have control over the board, but yet they may receive directly or indirectly tax dollars, is not a new concept in Oklahoma City. There are other things out there that do that. The chamber, all of the chambers, Downtown Oklahoma City, Inc., State Fair Board. I mean, there's a number of things out there that we utilize, the Boathouse Foundation, the Zoological Society. I could go on with entities that we don't control the board on, that we rely on to help us guide the city in any number of ways. And some of those receive money directly or indirectly. So I don't want the public out there that's watching thinking that this is a brand new concept here when we've used this concept before in other things. But then I'll go back to my original statement. I think there's some very good concerns that have been brought up, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can get these answered. But you know, again, this is an agreement with the alliance that we're voting on. We're not forming the alliance here.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, Ed?
I think there are some intangibles, given the timing,
that are independent of the efficacy of this group or this idea. And we are coming off the most expensive, traumatic, non-transparent set of elections in our city's history. And I think there is a need for healing. There is anxiety and stress among significant numbers of the populace when they see our fire and police in conflict with what they perceive as city and a non-transparent entity that to this day remains unidentified. So when Steve Lackmeyer broke this story in the Oklahoman on Friday, there's an explosion of Facebook activity and blog activity on like OKC Talk, and except for the few comments asking for more information, they are universally not just negative, but extraordinarily negative, very fearful. It's the sense of urgency that we move forward with this that is creating questions, and it centers on the lack of transparency. That we are, the conspiracy theorists and those are concerned about this perceived plutocratic fusion of the city apparatus with a very small number of extraordinarily wealthy and politically charged individuals. And I think that what's concerning to a lot of people is that you are transferring city apparatus, which is under the open records, and you're doing all this to the exclusion of the Open Records Act. I think that's what's pouring gas on the fire of this fear of the lack of transparency in this context. I mean, it might be different 6 months ago or even 6 months from now, but to do it today, 1 week after these traumatic elections, I think you have to take it in that context. And so I would leave that at that. I do have some questions. There in the newspaper article, there's a focus on the Convention Center Hotel. And that's another issue that creates anxiety in terms of lack of transparency. When the Urban Land Institute had an advisory panel last year and indicated that the Convention Center is not viable without a hotel next to it, and that the taxpayers are going to need to fund that to the tune of $50 million. In the newspaper article, it indicates that a focus of this entity will be the Convention Center Hotel. And I haven't seen that mentioned in the presentation this morning. So that would be the first question: is what focus would this entity have on the procurement of funding or the establishment of a Convention Center Hotel?
I think that if the City Council decides that the development of a convention center hotel is necessary for the economic success of the convention center, the Alliance could be directed to help put that project together. And that we do need to begin to look at and do some feasibility studies on the convention center hotel project to get more information and answer some of the questions about the impact that it has on the financial success of the convention center. I think that the development of the convention center hotel will be one of the most difficult projects this community will undertake. And it is going to take a level of focus and resources to pull the ideas together. It's a very complicated financing structure typically. It can be a very complicated ownership structure. In some other communities, the hotels are actually publicly owned. So we need to begin to do the research and the study that's necessary to help us make decisions about that in the future, to help you all make that decision in the future. And it will, it could potentially require a great deal of public subsidy. So, I mean, yes, that is one of the projects that we felt that the Alliance could work on and provide the resources and the expertise so that you wouldn't have to necessarily go hire some other consulting firm to help you do that. But and we have a little bit of experience putting together hotel projects, but this one has the potential of being even more complicated.
If there's a study that is undertaken that shows an adverse outcome, that study could be effectively buried. It would never be accessible to the public. Is that?
I think what I would foresee happening is just, and I'm kind of just talking about this right now to respond to your question, is that if the city council wanted to do that kind of study and wanted the Alliance to help head that up, they would require us to come back and report on the findings. I mean, I think that's what we do with consultants typically. So I don't think the findings would be buried. That's a decision for the city council to make.
No, or it could be. I mean, could the Alliance, well, help me understand the budget. You're asking for roughly $300,000 from the city council. There's a contingency that the manager can use for an additional $100,000.
And that's a part of the
$300,000.
Yeah.
And then what monies would come from other trusts?
That has not been identified yet. We are still talking with all those other entities and developing agreements with them.
But it's anticipated that there would be funds and the scope of service from Urban Renewal, the OIA, and the Industrial and Cultural Trust.
Is it a fair statement that the sum of those totals would be in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $700,000 a year?
No.
Okay.
You mean including the money from the city?
Yes.
Yes, it could get to be about that with the money from the city.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Kathy?
Councilman White asked for a hard copy of the presentation this morning, and so we'll provide that all to you today, a hard copy of the presentation. If you want it electronically, we can provide that to you also.
Okay.
I just have one other question. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Kathy,
I was going to go get them.
you made the statement that the convention center was going to be probably one of the biggest challenges of all the developments that the city has been involved in. Is
The
that
Convention Center Hotel.
okay? What do you find is so unique about the convention center hotel? Is it the location, or is it just the
It's the
design of-
financing and the structure of the hotel and the level of public subsidy that's been needed in other communities to finance a convention center hotel, and whether or not that level of subsidy is going to be necessary here, and all of those different kinds of questions. They're very expensive to build.
Well, I don't think we've built anything that was cheap. And in reference to that, I mean, the Ford Center, everything that we developed, from the beginning, it was either brand new to us, which was a major challenge. I just don't understand all this here conversation about this issue about the hotel, convention hotel. And most of us on this council has traveled throughout the United States, stayed in convention hotels. Is there one hotel that we could compare to the size, to the population of Oklahoma City that has been developed as a convention hotel that's being successful within our region that you all know of?
I could probably get you some information about that, but I think the main thing is the difference in that, with the arena and building a new convention center, those will clearly be publicly owned and operated. A convention hotel may not be publicly owned. You may not want it to be publicly owned. You certainly will probably want it to be privately operated. So it's more of the structure of the transaction and the financing associated with it that's complicated, and not as clear as funding an arena that we had a dedicated sales tax to pay for. We don't have that with the Convention Center Hotel. We're going to have to, if a subsidy is required, we're going to have to identify what the sources of that subsidy will be and put together some kind of financing structure. So that's the difference in the Convention Center Hotel. And we can get you examples of other cities and their Convention Center hotels. There are very few that are being built in the United States right now that don't have some kind of public involvement.
I understand that. But I keep looking back to the Skirvin Hotel. I mean, at one point in time, people said that was an impossibility.
there was no way that it could be done. But some kind of way, y'all sit down, some committee, and it worked out.
Yes, it did, and it took a couple years to figure it out. And I'm not saying that we won't figure out the Convention Center Hotel. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that it takes a great deal of effort and focus to do those kinds of projects and do them well.
And it almost didn't work multiple times.
There were many
We were at the 11th
forks in the
hour.
road where it could not have worked out as well as it did.
And I anticipate we're going to have a convention center hotel too, but now without some challenges and now without some decisions that will be made by the council as we go forward.
I like Mr. Couch's point, not without the decision of the council as we go forward. Keep in mind that council still has the authority to direct this agency to do what they're going to do. They're not going to start out on their own and do all these things. If we want them to do a study on a convention center hotel, we will direct them to do that. And then their study will become our property, subject to the Open Meeting Act, subject to full disclosure. It's not like anything's going to be done under the table or they're going to do things on their own hook. They are going to respond, because of the nature of the way they're put together, to our policy directions. And I think that's a key point to remember. This new entity will have no policy-making authority. And Pete's point that we're going to bring back one option. Well, if it's not the option that this council likes, we'll send them back and ask them to do another option. We have that responsibility, just like we do in the MAPS 3 projects. And we have that same responsibility to some extent, authority, when we deal with projects that are brought to us by city staff. We are the policy-making body here. We need to keep that in mind, that we will make policy and we will insist that the policies be carried out by the people we want.
One last comment. The convention hotel thing is a little bit off the subject, but I have to make this comment. Because of the cost and the public cost of the convention center hotel, it seems to me totally irresponsible for people from the convention and tourism and for newspaper editors to editorialize in favor of saying that we should move the convention center to the front when we've got another $60 million to come up with out of general fund revenues, most likely, to subsidize a convention center hotel to make a convention center work. I mean, we all ought to get on the same page. We've never said we want to move the convention center to the front, and one of the reasons we didn't is because we all knew the convention center, or most of us knew, that the convention center hotel was going to be a big problem and it had to be dealt with, or the convention center wasn't going to work. And so it's irresponsible for just to be beating the drum saying we're losing 47 cents a minute if we don't put the convention center to the front of the line when we can't put it to the front of the line. It would be an utter fiscal the epitome of fiscal irresponsibility to move it to the front of the line without a decision about how we're going to finance the hotel. I mean, so I read that in a particular newspaper on a regular basis that totally disregards the fact of where's the rest of that money going to come from. And I think that's...
We also work really hard to make sure that isn't the general fund.
This would kind of well fail if we had $60 million out of the general fund.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have essentially started the hotel, the convention center process. We started it. The advisory committee has appointed a consultant to do some site selection work, and the project's been started. And I for a different reason, I think I take exception to the articles that have been in the paper as well, that the thing's being put off. This is a long, complex project. It's going to take work that's starting right now to get it done in any kind of reasonable time frame. And if we follow the MAPS philosophy like we have in the past, that we do these projects after they're paid for, whether you put this thing today or 2 years from now, it's a long time off. And we're going to have to suffer the loss of $47 million a minute or whatever it was.
And we're going to have the opportunity to discuss that issue in detail next week.
Good transition, Jim. Ready to move on to the concurrence docket?
Dr. Warner?
Yeah. Dr. Warner, this item has been
Thank you,
deferred
Captain.
for 2 weeks. Did you want to speak to this item today while you're here? Jack, we will need your name and address for the record. Thanks for coming down.
Jack Warner, 2721 Northwest 42nd. I'm in your district. Thank you. I was pleased with the conversation, and I don't think what I'll add is a great deal different than what I've heard on this, but I want to say three things very clearly and quickly, if I may. Number one, as Suzanne Broadbent and I sat reading the paper this past week and became aware of this issue, the first thing I'd like you to know was our comments were about what a great job our city leadership has done over the past 15, 20 years, and how pleased we are with the direction and a sense and a belief and a feeling that we can trust the leadership of this city. And that's a comment that I realize that has been made many times in many public gatherings. So I say that with sincerity, and I want you guys to know that. Guys, meaning in a general sense. I hope that you will do everything to maintain both that direction and that sense of trust. And the first thing that concerned me about this in the paper, Pete, you alluded to, Larry, you brought up, is please, however you decide to run it is fine, whether it's this entity or otherwise. But if you go with this entity, please don't let this statement of, well, we're not quite sure how open records will apply. Give us full, absolute, total transparency. And that ties into the second thing. While I appreciate and value and think these people care and have done a great job, I'm sorry, I don't want just the Oklahoma City Chamber and Heritage Hills and Nichols Hills and Gaillardia making the decisions of what to be brought to the table and patting us on the head and saying, we'll take care of you. If you believe that South Oklahoma City and Northeast Oklahoma City haven't been stepchildren, then you believe differently than I do. I raised my children in South Oklahoma City. Now I'm a wealthy North Sider, but I believe South Oklahoma City and Northeast Oklahoma City need more representation on this decision-making board. So those are my statements. I appreciate all the hard work you do. I know it's not easy. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Mr. Warner, thank you for calling me on Friday. I enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate the comments.
All right, we're on to the concurrence docket. Any comments or questions on the concurrence docket?
Your Honor, I had a question on our previous docket, if it's not on the consent docket.
Okay.
And that is on item B5, which is the naming, it's an ordinance setting for final hearing on May 17th on the name of our new boulevard.
Right.
And I was curious how the suggested name came to be, Oklahoma City Boulevard. It seems like it lacks pizzazz. It's certainly accurate. It is a boulevard into Oklahoma City, but I wondered how that name was selected.
It has evolved through largely 10 years of personal study on my account on branding, on communications, and on naming rights opportunities that I think the city ought to seize when it gets the opportunity. And I can speak to you offline about it if you'd like, but I mean, it's a very complicated, long-withstanding concern of mine that the city has never protected its brand well enough, and this is an opportunity for it to protect it. So when I speak on branding, sometimes it takes me an hour, so I'll be glad to speak with you specifically.
You'd be talking to an engineer, so a lot, 2 hours.
Yeah. Part of the idea is to keep the engineers out of the branding aspect of it, yeah. All right, Meg, did you have one more comment on the consent docket?
My comment was, and I don't have my memo in front of me any longer, but my comment was about the extension of the agreement, development agreement with Midtown. And I just really, wanted to compliment the group for everything they've done in Midtown. It's been a huge success story, but our economic development agreement had some thresholds that had to be met before those funds could be released. And given the economic climate of the last 18 months, they've run a little short of meeting all of those expectations with occupancies and completion dates. And so I'm fully confident that within the next 2 years they will get there, and appreciate the staff working with them to create an extension and allow that extraordinary private investment to continue along with some of our public dollars. Thank you.
And on to the concurrence docket. Any comments or questions here? All right. Is there any individual considerations on the concurrence docket?
Mayor, I just wanted to see if, is Eric Weiner, Eric, is he here?
Eric had a speaking engagement earlier this morning. I don't know if he's in yet or not. He may be in the back room. But go ahead. If not, we'll pass the comments on.
I just wanted to ask a question on these two projects at Thelma Parks Elementary School, but I can call in this afternoon.
All right. Any other comments or questions on the concurrence docket? Ready to go? Nope. Eric just walked in. Eric, you want to come forward and skip out a couple of questions on Thelma Parks Elementary School? And perhaps Wilson too, or just Thelma Parks? Skip.
I'm sorry, 5 and U on the concurrence docket.
Is it the change order?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me get my notes here. I'll be happy to answer those.
So in the meantime, on Wilson, it looked like we were just putting the bond in place to accept the project. It's fully complete and fabulous.
Question?
Yes, I just wanted to find out exactly what these two change orders in reference to Thelma Parks is for.
So there's actually on Thelma Parks, there's 11 total items that are included in the change order for $27,000.
Okay.
Correct?
Right.
The project's about 60% complete. There's 11 items. It doesn't include any extensions of time, and it's just a change order to implement several construction of building permit fee. There was an increase in the overall fee for the building permit, corridor painting, plumbing extension that was required, a new sump pump, countertop replacements, and a few other just general construction items that are necessary to get it to that 60% level.
Are there any future plans for continued construction projects at this school? It just seems like that there is forever and a day construction going on at that school.
So as a part of the Maps for Kids projects, I mean, once we complete Maps for Kids, there's not other city maps-related projects scheduled there, but there is some ongoing bond issue work that I believe that the school district has scheduled, whether it's general maintenance and repair. We obviously have the bond issue gymnasium work that's yet to follow that's coming in the next few years, but other than those, I'm not aware of anything else.
Okay, well, I'll come back to it later on. I got another issue at the end, so thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
All right, ready to vote the concurrence docket? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 8. These are items that require a separate vote. The first is a zoning case in Ward 2. The address is 301 Northwest 61st Street. It's currently R1 single-family residential, and it would become a simplified plan unit development. Ed?
Is there anyone here to talk about the matter?
Like a gentleman there raised his hand.
Okay.
Good morning. We will need your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. It's Chris Krotz. It's 3121 Northwest 163rd Court. I don't know that I have anything to say, but I'd answer any questions that you have. Okay. We're just building an office building at 61st and Harvey is what we're doing. And that was zoned residential, and there's residential lots all the way around it. There's no residential houses that are next to it.
I understand there's no protest. The Planning Commission recommended approval. Yep.
All right. Cast your votes.
I appreciate it.
Passed unanimously. Item 8B, this is a final hearing. I think we're good to go on this item. This is one that the Chief informed us about a couple of weeks ago. Is there any comments or questions? The Chief is in the building if anyone has any questions. Ready to go? All right. Cast your votes then on 8B. Passed unanimously. Item 8C is a public hearing. This item was introduced last week, and we have one person that's signed up to speak. Carl Gaskins. Come on forward, Carl. Good morning.
Good morning.
We'll need your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Carl Gaskins. I live at 1424 Northwest 28th Street, Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And this item up here, I think is a very bad law. It looks to basically ban taxi cabs from parking anywhere on any city street at any time other than in a taxi stand. I don't know if the council recognizes that All taxi cab drivers are independent contractors. In many cases, it's their only form of transportation on or off duty. Many drivers, including me, park their car on the street at night when they go home. When I go to pay my water bill, I use a parking meter. This would specifically ban me using a parking meter at any time. I think it's bad. It's almost like we're wanting to get rid of the taxi cabs from the view of the public. And taxi cabs need to be out there. We need to improve public transportation. We need to improve.
Your concern is that the taxi cabs are, that a taxi cab driver might have personal business while he's in his cab, and it's going to be difficult to conduct that personal business if he's in his cab if this is passed. Is that your concern?
That is one of many concerns.
Okay.
Also, there's 4 cab stands in the entire city. If we're to be out there providing transportation, it's hard to get out there and get the saturation we need if we can't be on the city street. In Bricktown, we've got 1 cab stand.
Give me an example so I can understand.
About the being have to be out there? Okay, in Bricktown, we've got 1 cab stand. It's located on Mickey Mantle Drive, south of Wanda Jackson Way, between 12 and 2.
And a cab stand is defined as what, a specific part of the city where we've identified that cabs can park?
Operate out of, yes.
Okay, okay. No, go
Only
ahead.
cab for taxis.
So there's one of those in Bricktown?
Yeah, 1 in
Okay.
Bricktown. Between 12 and 2, it's, I believe, very important to have taxi cab availability throughout Bricktown. So when we have intoxicated individuals coming out of these establishments, the taxi cab is closer than their own car. We have to be there. Otherwise, you're going to have unsafe driving conditions for everyone. It's also economic for us. If we're just sitting in one little corner away from everything, we don't get used. It's, overall, I think this, the way it's written is, all the time, everywhere, no parking on the street. It's not good. I don't know if anybody's even looked at how complete that is. Also, moving this from Chapter 32 into Chapter 56 changes the penalty from a Class A offense to a Class B offense. So where before we had a parking violation with a simple fee, now we've got a maximum of $1,200 and up to 6 months in jail for parking your car in the wrong place, the way it's written. I think that's just a bit extreme also. I got a number of things there. Sorry.
It's all right.
That, I guess, is the bulk of it. The fact that it's all the time, everywhere.
You aren't precluded from driving your cab and picking up fare at any point. You could always pull off and let somebody in. Would that be
Yes, that's
allowable?
true.
Your concern is that you want more spaces, at Bricktown as an example, that you could park and wait for someone to come and solicit?
Yeah, yes. It's not just in Bricktown, though. It's anywhere.
Yeah. I think one of our concerns, or not concerns, is one of our issues is, we don't have enough business now for the taxi cabs, and we're trying to encourage them. We want more of them. We want you all to be successful. I think it reflects on a growing city, the fact that we have more taxi cabs needed for visitors or for whatever reasons. But in most cities that have a more vibrant taxi cab business, cabs are driving around and get hailed.
Yes, and we do that.
And that's still allowable.
Yes.
But, I guess I have a problem if we're going to take up parking spaces that could go to the general public, and if you're asking for more parking spaces for different cabs, that's taking spots away from the other general public, isn't it?
Well, I'm not asking for dedicated cab stands, more of them. We probably do need more of those. But I'm talking about a vacant parking space that's not being used. Even if I have to pay the meter during the day, that's fine.
And you wouldn't be allowed to do that under this ordinance?
No, not at all. Not the way it's written.
It's interesting. Okay. Now, Yankee, bring up some good points. Chief, you want to comment on this?
Yeah, the ordinance does change. Basically, the main thing is they can't park at a meter, and I think that's really a positive thing. I'll give you a personal experience because when I was downtown and checking on this by the Renaissance downtown, there's there's an area there where the cabs can park. There are cab stands. Well, there's like 3 cabs lined up in meters. So I went back to check the meter, and they weren't plugged. And they continually move up, so he may have plugged the one before, because if they're going to park at a meter, by law, you have to plug the meter. You can't just take up a meter space.
Yeah.
So the law says they're violating the law if they don't plug it. Well, they don't plug it, or they'll plug a meter, but 2 seconds later, when the next cab moves up, they'll move up into a space that's not plugged, and they won't get back out, they won't plug the meter. So you have 3 spaces that the public's not allowed to park. In fact, I wanted to get a sandwich, and I didn't have a spot to park in there because the taxi cabs were taken. And taking those spots, and they were constantly moving. So I really think if you're going to have meters, it's a good ordinance to say the cabs cannot park at those meters. They can't take up their business. They're there, and they do provide a good service. And I agree with some of the comments that he's making, that there has to be an appropriate number of taxi cab stands to meet the needs of what's going on downtown and to meet the needs of Bricktown, because I agree with that. And I've actually asked my staff to look at 2 o'clock in the morning, we don't want people getting in their private cars. We want cabs available. At the same time, we'd rather not have them driving around, creating more of a traffic volume than needed, because you now have 3 companies that it's getting more competitive between the cabs. So you have a lot more cabs out there competing. But I think what this does do is it keeps them off the meters. If you're going to have meters, they shouldn't be parking there to do business. So that's kind of the point of this.
Carl, if you were going to add a taxi stand in Bricktown, for instance, where would you put it?
I think a very good location would be on Vinskill Avenue, facing south.
Near where the bars are?
Well, yeah, it's kind of in between them. It's actually the only other thing on Vinskill is Crabtown. But it would be, the front of the cab stand would be aligned with Sheridan, so that as people went up and down Sheridan, if they come out of the Wormy Dog or across from the venue, we would be right there. That would be a very good location.
And currently, the only place you are is on Mickey Mantle Drive, between Sheridan and Reno, I'm guessing?
No, it's between Wanda Jackson and Reno, so it's the far south end, away from all the bars.
I see. Okay.
I would just ask, on the equal protection of the law as it relates to this, what would be the difference if an executive limo service that wasn't a limo, a stretch limo, but some of the executive cars that they use, if they're parked at a meter and paying for the meter, what would be the difference in the cab parked at a meter and paying for the meter?
There really wouldn't be any difference whatsoever. I mean, it's something that, and I'm not sure if the ordinance addresses the limos. I mean, if it does it may be something we want to look at. But, them plugging the meter and taking up that space if they're waiting. But usually, limousine services have, they're not running as a taxi cab. They have a specific person to pick up at a specific time. And they may, now they could still probably use the meters under the current ordinance. I'm not saying that it may be the same type of situation we want to look at when we don't allow that also. But, again, they're not lined up. Limos usually aren't lined up waiting to pick individuals up like you have the cab services are now doing.
But you have some companies that, it's an executive service, and they use, SUVs, or they may use a Lincoln town car. And they're identified to some degree, and if they're parked at a meter waiting on someone, if they bring someone down for an executive meeting at a board meeting at any one of the main offices downtown Oklahoma City, and they're going to park on a meter, and they're going to park there for an hour, and they plug the meter. I'm trying to find, how would you legally cite the taxi cab driver who's parked at a meter, and he chooses to put $1 in the meter for an hour parking or for the 2-hour meters? It just seems like that I think that we could get to a point where you're discriminating against the taxi cab driver who is doing the same thing that the executive car service or executive services is providing for transportation, and they're parking on the meter for the same purpose of picking someone up and transporting them to a designated location. And then how much do we pay? How much do the taxi cab companies pay for their permit to do business in the city of Oklahoma City?
For the individual cab, it's $30 for the permit on the vehicle. And I think you have to have a $302 business license, and there's various other things, but those are the ones I'm aware of. My license, my individual driver's license that I get from the city is $30 also.
And again, Councilman, there are loading zones. I mean, there are commercial loading zones. There's places where, that are provided for limousines to be able to stop and pick up people. There are cab stands that are designated for cabs to legally park and to back up so that they can wait to pick up their clients. The problem here is that they want to extend that into areas, because you become so more competitive, they want to extend that into an area that the city has designated as parking meters for the public. So they decide they're going to extend that, and they can, under the current ordinance right now, they can do that. Taxi cabs under the current ordinance can if they'll get out and plug the meters. The problem is that they're constantly moving and they don't plug those meters. Taxi cabs don't plug the meters because they're only there for a few minutes and then they move up. But they're still taking away that space for the public to be able to park. A limousine, on the other hand, in most cases, we don't have that issue. They're not backed up waiting to pick up the next person that walks out of a business. They're usually scheduled there. Now, if they're going to go do business and they want to park their personal vehicle there and plug it, leave that limousine and go do their business, yes, they could potentially still do that. And the same thing with probably a cab that's licensed. If they're there and they're off duty, I guess, and they wanted to park their cab to go into a grocery store and do business and plug the meter, they could still do that. But they're not in the process of waiting to do business with the public and under that scenario.
Okay.
So it just has to be determined, and that could always be a defense to them that they weren't picking up fares, they were doing business, and they plugged the meter in doing so. But we're talking about where they're actually out there, providing that service.
So if we had designated spaces, that was enough spaces for the taxi cab drivers or the companies to use like they do at the airport, I mean, has anybody ever looked at the possibility of having a program similar to what you have at the airport? You can't park as just a citizen that in that the taxi zone out at the airport.
Yes, sir. You have that now. You have designated areas right now for taxi cab stands. The issue is going to be, are they large enough, and are there enough of them throughout the city in areas where the taxi cab service is needed? I think in Bricktown may be a good place for us to look at in designating other areas so that they can provide that service. There may not be enough. The area downtown by the hotels currently, by the Skirvin and by the Renaissance in those areas, you have about 4 or 5 spaces down there now for taxi cabs. You'll never, ever, you could probably designate half that block and it wouldn't be enough, because you'll always have the competitiveness of it. You're still going to have cab drivers wanting to get in on that and extend that even on into the area behind whatever you designate if you don't have an ordinance that says you can't do that. And basically that's what we're saying here at this point is we've got meters and you can't park at those meters. And the only way really to enforce that is to not have it the way it is now, because now you can say they can park there if they plug them, and it's hard to enforce because you have to get out and you have to check it. You have the people there that enforce meters. The cab drivers will stand outside their cab and wait to see at the end of the block for them to come up to enforce it, and they'll run over and they'll plug the meter before they get the enforcement. So it's a game, and it's almost impossible to enforce unless you completely prohibit it.
Okay. Meg?
I'm just a little bit concerned, Chief, about the personal use of the vehicles and how we distinguish, somebody that's their only means of transportation, and how do they do personal business?
Well, if they're not sitting in the cab, they just have to ascertain. If they're not in the cab and it's locked up and they're doing their personal business, and the meter's plugged, then, you would just have to assume that would be the case. It's pretty easy to distinguish if they're waiting for a fare, because they're not going to leave their cab. They're going to be lined up behind the other cabs in a general area. It's really pretty hard. I mean, it's really pretty easy to determine the elements of that violation under those circumstances, I think.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and make a final comment, and we'll move forward.
I was going to say, with what he's saying, that's not in this current version of the ordinance. There is no nothing distinguishing whether I'm doing business or not. It just says I shall not do it, and that would be all-encompassing.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we relied on officer discretion, though, to try and play, the entire role. I mean, it's hard to legislate things like that. Thanks for coming down today, and I would ask staff to look in the areas of Bricktown that he's talking about, but the potential for another cab stand, if there is a place. I don't want to start taking parking spaces out of Bricktown that the general public can use, but if there is a place, that does seem like a viable place in Bricktown to have an additional cab stand, especially if he says it's necessary or needed, and they can continue to make business. But we appreciate you coming down and bringing this. It was a good discussion, and we wouldn't have had it if you hadn't come down, so thanks.
Mayor, I have one other question about this, though. Okay. Well, it's just two.
You can go ahead. I think Skip's just...
One is, why are we moving this from Chapter 32 to Chapter 56? Legal? And what ramifications as far as the sanctions by moving it from Chapter 32 to Chapter 56?
We're moving it from Chapter 32 to Chapter 56 because all of the taxi ordinances are in Chapter 56. So just to eliminate any confusion, to have one ordinance concerning taxis in Chapter 32 and the rest of them in Chapter 56, they're all going to be consolidated now into one chapter. As far as the sanctions, I don't know about that. I'll have to check and get back to you. I'm not sure about that.
So you don't know whether or not it changes the penalty that's in Chapter 32? Does it increase the penalty for Chapter 56 once it's included in Chapter 56?
I'm not sure about that. I'll have to get back to you. I'll have to check.
Well, and the other thing is, speaking of discretion, this statute, this ordinance, it prohibits taxi cab operators from standing or parking their vehicles in any place other than in a taxi cab stand. Are you talking about the individual standing, or are you talking about the parking of the vehicle?
This language is taken verbatim from the ordinance in Chapter 32 to Chapter 56. We haven't changed that language at all.
Right. This is existing language, and it would be a person operating a taxi cab. I would need to check on this, but operator is probably a defined term in Chapter 56. In any event, it would be while they're operating the taxi cab, not just them getting out of their vehicle and standing.
I think that deserves some clarification. I think it really deserves some clarification. And I think this prohibits taxi cab operators from standing or parking their vehicles at any place other than in a taxi cab stand. I just think that legal could go back and look at this again, because you never know what a person is parking for. And if the officer decides to issue that individual just based upon his perception, I think that we could define the actual violation a little clearer, so everyone will have due notice that you are in violation of this ordinance.
And it might be clear from the definitions in Chapter 56, but we'll have the answer for you by the final hearing, and also if it needs to be amended to make it clear, we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I? First of all, thank you, Mr. Gaskins, for coming down here. I have a concern for Mr. Gaskins representing a privately owned business. In general, you know, the additional regulations that this is adding just makes his job more difficult. If we're concerned about them taking up metered parking spaces, perhaps there's another way to address it. I do share several of Mr. Gaskin's concerns about elevating the possible penalty for this and the inability of using the cab for personal use. I know in some cities they have an on and off sign on top of the cab to distinguish when a cab is accepting fares and when one isn't. I'm not sure if Oklahoma City cabs have that, but I am concerned about this ordinance, mainly from just these individuals do not make much money to begin with, and to add additional burdens and possible costs, I just don't like that idea. And perhaps there's another way to resolve the issue of them taking up metered parking spaces. Thank you.
You know, I have a question. On cab stands, who determines the location and number of those stands? And what's the process for adding stands to the city?
I believe it's a traffic commission, but either Jill or Amy should know for sure.
That would be traffic commission, and there was a suggestion when this ordinance went through traffic commission, they discussed the possibility of adding more stands, and they seemed open to that possibility.
Okay. So the individual cab companies could go to the traffic commission and apply for additional cab stands wherever they thought they were needed?
Yes. Staff could put an agenda item on the traffic commission agenda, and traffic commission could decide where to place additional stands.
Thank you.
And do the cabs have off-duty signs on them? No.
Okay. Ready to move forward? Do we have a motion and a second on this item? Okay, we're moving item 8C forward, and it was introduced last week, and this was a public hearing to discuss the merits. Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. Move on to item 8D. This is another item that was introduced last week.
This has to do with attendant permits for records.
Okay. All right. Voting on item 8D, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8E is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8E? Has anyone signed up? All right, no one signed up. How about a motion? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8F is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8F? All right, and no one has signed up. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8G is a series of 3 revocable rights-of-way permits. First is for the American Heart Association, which wants to hold a Start Heart Walk downtown in Bricktown. Is anyone here representing that organization?
Debbie's here.
You want to come up? If you'll pull that microphone down, give us your name and address.
Hi, Debbie
Give you a few
Height.
seconds to tell us about this exciting event.
Debbie Height from the American Heart Association, and our address is 5700 North Portland. And I don't really have anything to say other than I would love to invite you guys out. This is an ongoing event that we have every year, and we'd love to have all of you guys come and welcome survivors. We honor heart attack survivors and stroke survivors on the ballpark field and then walk around. So we like to show off what's happening with MAPS, so we're being good friends of the city.
Right.
Do you guys have any questions for me about the event?
No. Thanks for coming down.
Of course,
All right.
thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
All right. Cast your votes on item 8G1, and it passes unanimously. Item 8G2 is a request to hold the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon, which the only event that goes through wards 1, 2, 6, 7, and 8. And I think Mike and Stacy, y'all still here? Come on forward. The race is coming up on May 1st, starting in downtown Oklahoma City. Yes, Mike.
I'm Mike Baum. My address is 6925 Briar Creek in Oklahoma City. And I'm here just to ask permission for our event again this year. This is our 11th year. We have an awesome track record. Stacy Weddington has joined me today. I'll let her speak in a second. But first, I'd like to thank the city staff that's been tremendous help to us. Project 180 has been a little bit difficult for us this year. We've had to change our course, but the Oklahoma City Traffic Division has been awesome at meeting with us, giving us deadlines on projects, what streets we can use. It's been just an awesome amount of support, so my thanks to the staff. Also, Downtown OKC helps us put together the permit and starts the process and helps us get it in the right language, and their support's been tremendous as well. Last year we had 22,000 participants. We kind of expected that maybe we'd level off at some point in time, but that's not happening. Right now we're projecting 24,000 participants, so our race is still growing, and the support we give to the memorial, I'll let Stacy address that.
Thank you for having us here this morning and for letting us take up 26.2 miles of our fair city once a year. I will dovetail a little bit of what Mike said about the Project 180, and while the construction has necessitated some changes to the course, we're really excited about them. The changes are few, and it's just at the start, but we're going to let people start on the Harvey side of the memorial, and it's going to grant our runners an entirely new view of downtown Oklahoma City as they proceed south on Harvey. So we're really, really excited about it. I don't know that we would have ever done the move had we not felt the need to do that off of Robinson, but we're really pleased at the chance to show off a whole different vantage point and view of downtown. On behalf of the memorial and the marathon, we just want to thank you all for 10 years of incredible support. What you all do and allow us to do through this city is severalfold. It brings thousands and thousands of folks from around the world here to the city, many of whom wouldn't come for any other reason, but we have become a destination marathon, and so we are on their radar screens. And you allow us to showcase what we are at heart, which are just great, welcoming, hospitable folks. We are happy to welcome these people into our town. We show off all that is good about our city, and these runners come back year and year and year again and again, telling their friends. So the word of mouth, more than anything, is what's contributed so much to the growth of our race. That's because of everybody in this room and everybody in our city. So we thank you so much for allowing us to have this event here, and thank you for your support.
Well, thank you very much. It's beautiful. Is this the poster that's up for this year?
That's the 10th anniversary commemorative poster from last year, and that is to thank you for 10 wonderful years, and we're looking forward to the next 10 with you all at our side.
Great. Do we have a motion on this item? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Thank you all and good luck. Item 8GC is a right-of-way permit for the Autism Peace Walk.
And we have an amendment for that, and that's been passed out before you. And Dennis, can you highlight the changes on the amendment?
It's a new route.
Be glad to, Mayor and Council. Due to some construction in the area, I'm sure you're surprised that there's construction in the area, but it was necessary to change the route slightly. Instead of going down Reno to Gaylord and then north on Gaylord, the walk will proceed west on Reno to Oklahoma and then up to Sheridan and then back over to Gaylord. And the rest of the route is the same.
All right. We good to go? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Dennis. Item 8H is a public hearing. This is a budget adjustment for police.
On both the sales tax funds, just like we have on the general fund, we've had an increase in revenues, and so this is to address those increase of revenues on those funds.
Comments or questions in on item 8H? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8I is a public hearing.
It's the same issue for police, or for fire.
You're right. It's a budget adjustment for fire. Comments or questions? All right, cast your votes on item 8I.
Quick
Yes.
question on the two of these together. Will they result in any increase in pay for the fire or police department?
No.
That's what I thought.
Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8J, it's a legal issue. I understand we do not need executive session.
We do not.
Comments or questions from council? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8K, I understand we do not need executive session.
Do not.
All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8L, I understand we do need executive session.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to move it to executive session. All right, cast your votes. That item is moved to executive session. Item 8M is claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8M? All right, how about a motion then? Second, and those claims are denied unanimously. On item 9, these are claims recommended for approval. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Move on to item 10. Pat, you want to get us started on items from council?
Nothing this morning, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Skip?
Yes. Last Friday was the ribbon cutting at Edwards Elementary School, and so I want to thank Miss Thelma Parks and the school board staff as far as the ones that attended. It was a great presentation of the growth of the MAPS projects, and to see the educational performance of the grades at Edwards Elementary School was just absolutely awesome. One of the few schools in the city of Oklahoma City that is named not by a president or some individual who did something in the community, but this school is named because an individual in 1938 had a vision, him and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Edwards, that to build a school for the African American children in the northeast quadrant of Oklahoma City, that he ultimately purchased over 80 acres of land to build homes in the area that is now referred to as Edwards Addition. Schools built vision in 1938. The school was built in 1943. The next major construction of the school, of remodeling, was in 1950. And so we see with what MAPS have done for the school is a great testament of the continuing legacy of Mr. Walter J. Edwards and his wife, Florence. I was impressed to see the development of the school. There are still some challenges that need to be addressed, and I have been given a commitment from Eric and the manager that those matters will be addressed. But one of the things that I wanted to point out right now is the fact that when they had Edwards Elementary School on the MAPS list, it was for the students at Edwards Elementary School. There wasn't any knowledge that another school would be closed and those students would merge at Edwards Elementary School. So when Dunbar was closed, all those students had to come to Edwards, which increased the capacity of the school, and I think as far as the classrooms, it satisfies. They're comfortable in reference to the classrooms. But what I think needs to be addressed now is that the program that they had was in the cafeteria. There was no seating room at all. And so all the children are sitting on the floor and all the guests are standing around the room or what little limited folding chairs they could find. I just think that, because of this major change in reference to the school population, if they could see if there's any funds, discretionary or whatever, to do a program room for those students at the school. This is an elementary school that, in some people's version of education, they predict that if you don't get it by the 3rd grade, your next measure of life is prison or a dropout and unemployment. I saw Friday one of the greatest testaments of education that you could see in Oklahoma City. Not a private school, not a charter school, a pure public school supported by public funds, and children who was just absolutely delighted to show everybody what they are learning there and the teachers' commitment to those children there at the school. And I hope we never lose sight of these elementary schools that are doing such a good job and the teachers that are doing such a good job. And we hear so much about the negativity, the negative aspect of some of our teachers. But this is a school that on any given day you can walk in there and you would just absolutely be amazed of what's going on with our public school. So Edwards Elementary School, I think the staff, the principal, and the school board members, and Mr. Ron Milligan, I got to give congratulations to him because he's helped in reference to some of the projects there. And Ms. Thelma Parks, who was one of the first persons that came to me on this council when I got elected and said, Mr. Kelly, if you would just help these kids have a safe place to walk in front of the school. And with her and Dennis and the Reverend Mitchell, we were able to meet with ODOT, and funds were put together, and they have a complete new drop-off and the renavigation of the trucks that was originally just right up on the front door of the school. So thank you, Mr. Couch, for your help. Meg?
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to say that today is really a memorable day for me. I really appreciate and want to thank the citizens of Ward 6 for allowing me the opportunity to serve with my colleagues again for another 4 years. Special thanks to President Robert Henry, who was willing to take some time to come down today to swear me in. And thanks to all those that came to join us, and I'd like to welcome my 2 new colleagues to the Horseshoe. Looking forward to serving with you both. April, just as a reminder, April is Litter Blitz Month, sponsored by Oklahoma City Beautiful. And I had the opportunity on Friday to work with 11 different companies. More than 70 individuals got out on Broadway from 6th Street to 13th Street and cleaned alleys and cleaned the streets all the way over to the railroad tracks. We picked up tons of trash, and I'm not going to describe some of the things we picked up, but it was an interesting day, and it just makes a huge difference in our community. We still have a couple of weeks to go, and I would encourage anybody, neighborhood associations or other, to get involved with Oklahoma City Beautiful and help pick up trash. Thank you, Mayor.
David? Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to say, again, thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, and the members of the council for making a new entry to the council feel welcome, and especially for the staff for sharing all the information and knowledge that they've had over the past few weeks. And one comment, Councilman Shadid and I were speaking this morning, going forward, if there could have been additional time after an election, especially for the new members of the council, before they took their seat on the council, it might be helpful. With the runoff delaying the time for myself coming on, that was very helpful to me over the past month to meet as many people within the city as possible. And again, I want to thank them as well as the voters of Ward 5 and appreciate the confidence the citizens of Ward 5 had shown me, and I'm going to do everything I can to fulfill their trust. Thank you.
All right. Pete?
I understand that the mayor commented this morning on the first recorded traffic jam in Ward 4. Actually, it wasn't in Ward 4, it was in Del City, really, because it was on Interstate 40.
That makes me feel better.
You would have to truck cars to Ward 4 to have a traffic jam in Ward 4. But my mother used to say that there was really only one reason that you're late, and that is because you didn't start early enough. And so that I did not start early enough, and I apologize to everybody that was sworn in this morning that I wasn't here to see most of that. And despite my concerns about what I consider to be an obscenity that occurred during that election, none of you should take that personally. I am so pleased to serve with all the 4 people that were elected this time. The obscenity that I refer to, you had nothing to do with, and I firmly believe that. But I can't, and I will not stop commenting on what I think was a terrible occurrence in the history of this city, to have these elections be so the contributors to them not be willing to put their names forward. I think that's a mistake. I think that's a blot on democracy as I see it, and I hate it personally. Don't take it personal, any of you. Don't, because I don't mean it, because I don't think any of you had anything to do with it. But that doesn't change how bad I think it was. Okay. The other comment I have is that, listen, after the taxi cab guy sat down and we've talked about it, I would like for us to ask staff to put matters on the Traffic Commission docket to look at additional cab stands and perhaps expanding the one, if there's one where they're queuing up in paid parking places, maybe put another space at that one. If there's enough demand for there to be a queue there that's outside the cab stand line, we ought to make the cab stand line longer, but then go ahead and enforce it on the where they're taking up meters. But I think we can ask that from the Horseshoe, can I not? And see.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to accommodate that, sir.
I just think that's a better way to, and I think I'd like to see it on as quickly as possible, because will go into effect in a week or 2 weeks, I guess, when the ordinance comes back.
You'd have 30 days. You'd have 30 days after passing the ordinance before it would go into effect.
Okay, well, that would give us some time perhaps to get some feedback from the Traffic Commission.
Or you could select a separate implementation, or
yeah.
Yes, you could even set a later effective date if you wanted
I do think the punishment's a little bit harsh, but perhaps if you used it once, kind of like theory I heard about the legislature wanting to return public hangings. Maybe if you did do one public hanging, it changed criminal activity in the state. I'm not for that, but possibility it would work.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all I have.
All right. Comments from council are always
As
interesting.
you can see, this is a tough act to follow when you follow Pete. I'd like to congratulate Meg and Pat on their re-election, and looking forward to serving with them. And I'd also like to welcome David and Ed to the Horseshoe, and looking forward to serving with them. I think it's going to be a great experience for the city, and continue to move the city in the right direction. I'd like to also congratulate Meg and make a point on last Thursday. She delivered a update to the South Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, an update on Project 180. And as I was seated in the back and observing the crowd, and Meg, I think you probably could testify to this also, the enthusiasm and the excitement and the positive response that these business people had in South Oklahoma City to what was going on in downtown Oklahoma City showed that what we're doing, while we are spending a lot of attention to downtown, the people appreciate and recognize the importance of some of these projects. And last week I had the opportunity to speak at the Northwest Kiwanis Club, and also at a group out of Quail Creek Country Club. And I happened to pick the same topic, Project 180. I didn't have the slides, didn't do as good a job as Meg did, but the enthusiasm of these two groups, again, to what was going on in our city, was really gratifying to hear. And so there are positive things going on, and that's a good sign. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ed?
Well, I'm also honored to be serving. It's a great day. I would echo the sentiments expressed by David. 7 days, even for a workaholic like myself, has been a little intense to get ready, and so maybe a little more time between the runoff and assuming duties would be helpful. I echo the sentiments of Pete, but I also want to focus on the need for healing and moving forward, in particular as it relates to fire and police. From what I know of psychology, I think there's a real opening. The public is stressed. I don't know if it's not really a great example, but when a child of divorce sees parents fighting, they don't really even care what the issues are. When they see the conflict of two entities that they love, they feel stress, and I think that applies to our public. They see this conflict that's occurred, and they just want both sides to reach out. And in talking to Jim Couch and talking to Phil Sipes and talking with other council members, business members of the chamber, and the public, I think we have a real opportunity, and everyone has expressed a desire to reach across to the other side, and I hope we can take advantage of that and really begin to heal and move forward. Thank you.
Gary?
Well, I'll just echo the congratulations to the four that got sworn in today, and I look forward to working forward with everybody. And I don't know whether to say this is common or not, moving all morning long with it, and we're not finished yet, but probably something you need to get used to. But congratulations.
Thanks. All right, on to city manager reports, and we have a report on the TIF district.
We do have a report on TIF districts, and before Curtis gets up here, let's talk about whether or not it is now 11:35. We do have an executive session coming up that we do need to get into and handle those issues, and I would ask council if they would rather that we put this presentation off 2 weeks, and we could do it on the 26th. This was a presentation requested by council members as an update on TIF, and so we could focus on the issues, other issues. But if council would like to do this and the executive session, we're willing to do so.
Well, why don't we put this off for 2 weeks? I don't think there's anything pending on this. It's just informational. Is that all right? Okay. Just put it off, and we'll go into executive session. And we'll be back.